Meeting's called to order at 6:07. Confirmation of a quorum. Mr. Secretary, we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum, yeah.
Okay. I think everybody has a copy. Does everybody have a copy of the meeting agenda?
Yes.
Yeah? Agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
And bring with you, but
Any issues with the agenda? Anybody want to turn it around or take anything out of order, which will require, obviously, a vote of the committee? Hearing none, we'll proceed with item 4.
Oh, hold on. I have one at,
You need agenda?
yeah, I need to add an item for the approval of invoices.
Okay.
At new number 9.
Motion's been made to add approval of invoices as item 9, make public comment 10, business 11, old business 12, and 13 adjournment. Motion been made by the secretary. Is there a second? Second. Second. All in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Against?
Who seconded?
I did.
Okay.
do you have it on your laptop?
That said, we can move into the main body of the agenda. One of our, but before I do that, I want to, as kind of general housekeeping, bring the committee's attention to 2 issues. I authorized on behalf of the committee Shawma to prepare a repair estimate for the West Wing. It was information that had been drifting around in various forms, and Bob Mayer requested that in order to look at the net cost of the town for Scheme 4/7, that he have a repair estimate. So Shawmut went back, I believe, to some of the original forensic engineering reports and put together a repair estimate. The second thing that happened in the committee's absence between the last meeting and this meeting was I requested a meeting with Shawmut and included Andy and Steve to talk to Shawmut about their estimating and the misunderstanding at the end of the last meeting regarding costs that were to be included or excluded as alternates. We had a good meeting. You're going to hear more about it tonight, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. I cleared it with the town compliance officer to make sure that what the protocol was, and the protocol's no agenda, no minutes, and so forth. So it was an informal meeting at Town Hall in order to realign our interests as far as what's supposed to be in the base, what alternates are in and what alternates are out. So Shawmut asked for guidance. We gave them guidance on behalf of the committee. More of that information will come out tonight. I think it was positive overall. Steve and Andy can
Yep, I agree.
chime in. So those 2 things did take place in the absence of the committee. That said, I would move to review and approval of the meeting, unless anybody has any comments? You can bring them up as we go, if you do. Then I would entertain a motion to waive reading and accept the meeting minutes from 9/24/15.
Make the motion. I'll second that.
Discussion, additions, it's a long set of minutes. Any changes, additions?
No.
No? That said, a vote in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Abstain.
Abstain? 1 abstention? Mr. Polito was not here. I knew we were missing something.
Probably why the meeting went quicker.
Right. Getting back to the first main agenda item, presentation of a draft guaranteed maximum price proposal for Project 7A, which includes the lockers, by Shawmut Design and Construction, and for the committee, review, comment, and approval to proceed with preparation of the GMP. The floor is yours, whoever wants to pick up on this.
I'll pick up on that. Everybody, that's what you have in front of you is the draft of the GMP that we prepared this week. First page, obviously, is just our cover page. It was dated October 8th.
Excuse me, do you have another copy?
Oh, right here.
Oh, never mind. Thank you.
Table of contents is second. We have an executive summary, and all the exhibits are listed. We'll be going through all of those one by one. The executive summary is the third page. We have the cost of the GMP at $6,573,236, which is shown on the next page with our cost breakdown in Exhibit A. Exhibit A is stuff that we've, all gone over before. The only changes here were the add alternates that are down listed at the bottom that we believe are going to be accepted by the building committee. So those were put into the base bid. Exhibit B is the breakdown.
You want to call, just...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to clarify, 7, you're saying not base bid.
Not base bid in the,
Let's call it one
Bids.
thing consistently, whatever it is. Bid summary sheet,
correct.
and it's the foundation for your GMP?
Correct.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman, or do you want to save those to the end?
It's up to how you all want to run it.
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify the issue with the cable rails versus a less expensive alternate. What's the GMP based on?
Cable rails.
Okay, thank you.
So continuing with Exhibit A, it's the trade breakdown sheets. This is where every trade is broken down that we received the public bids from on, I believe it was July 15th and August 18th. And those are all listed. Next is the project requirement summary sheet. They're a list of everything that we need as a general contractor to run the job in the field.
Excuse me, before you get there, I guess we're going to take, if you don't mind, the questions we go.
Sure.
The list of, this is the GMP trade cost summary, and we're to assume that these are the lowest qualified and confirmed bidders?
Gentlemen,
Correct.
you need to use the microphones. Pull them, there you go. Thank you very much.
So, again, back to this document of the trade bidders. These are vetted out trade bidders for this project, correct?
Correct.
And they've been vetted out and cross-checked to the point that their scope of work fits with other scopes of work. So as you look at this trade bid package schedule, does it provide the town of Fairfield with a complete project
Yes, it does.
to the drawings that were used at the time for bid?
Yep.
And those drawings were considered final? Prepared
Yes,
for bid?
well, the only things that wouldn't be in here would be on the last page, the alternates that are still not included, which they'll get to.
So these bids, when we left off at the last meeting, there was a question about extending these bids? Are these bids, is there confirmed that these bids are still valid?
I have mostly conversations and email trails with a lot of the trades that said they were willing to do that. We have typed up an official document that's more of a legality type document that we've given to purchasing to look at as well, and that has not been sent out to them yet. But from what I'm gathering and everyone that I've talked to, they're all pretty, up for holding their bids and getting the job going. There is a risk associated with that. Obviously, they don't have to, by law, hold that bid. This is what they're, telling me. I've got email trails that they're willing to do that, but there certainly is an associated risk.
When do the bids no longer, when did the extended bid period end, or when they were going to hold their bids?
90 days.
So 90 days, that would be
Next
then the
week.
15th?
Yeah, next week for the first bid that happened. The rebid happened on August 18th, so we have roughly 5 weeks more for that 90-day period to end.
And what was rebid at that time?
Roofing, general trades, building movers, and painting.
Okay, so you have verbal confirmation on these trade packages that they will extend?
Some verbal, some emails. Yes.
Do you have the entire list covered?
Everybody except for one trade that I've been hounding, trying to get a hold of them, which was my HVAC contract, or I'm sorry, the plumbing contractor. But I do know them well. I have talked to them before, and this is Crest Mechanical that I've worked with a lot. And I did speak with Steve a few weeks ago, and he said he would hold this bid as well.
Okay, thank you.
And contingencies? Are they included in here?
They are.
And would that be the line item that says construction contingency?
Yep. And there is also a owner contingency as well. The design contingencies are not in this GMP.
Where is the owner contingency?
You're going to get to that.
Oh,
right? You have
sorry.
owner's costs?
I'm jumping
You have
ahead.
Did you have a schedule for owner's costs?
I do not have the soft costs with me. There is a soft cost sheet that I can hand out for Scheme 4, which is almost identical, other than the things that changed for percentages, and DNC's fees, because Scheme 4 would have more, has more fees associated with it. And I can hand that out if you guys want now.
Well, I think I have one that you sent. But anyway, to answer your question, what is the contingency on the owner's side?
The exact number of the...
It's 5%.
Yep.
I don't know the number off the
Of
top of my head, but
total
it's 5%.
construction costs, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
So, as we're sitting here tonight, there's 10% contingency on this project?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
You have
there's-
5% that's covered in our GMP for construction, and then you have 5% that's on the owner's side.
so let's see.
Excuse me, could you show me on that page, Exhibit A, those two numbers you just referred to?
No, you can't, that's the problem.
The second
The owner
owner's
contingency is in the
not
soft
on the
costs.
page.
It's 328, 661, does that sound right?
Yeah, I see the 269.
Owner's contingency. That's
Oh, and the other, it's just buried in there somewhere,
Yeah, but
So
you
it's
can
on-
have them both together. Here,
because I don't see 269, it's not 10%.
323,
So it's
322.
5%.
323 and,
Not in here, in our owner. So this is the price for that.
and whatever you have in that,
This one up here,
yeah.
and 269. Okay. So brings us to 6573.
So what is the, if you were to take the GMP and add the owner's cost, do you have that number? Are we going to get to it? Or are you just presenting the GMP for the construction cost?
Just the GMP. I have a breakdown of the owner's costs for Scheme 4. And as I said, it is almost identical. There are
Well,
three
there's one
numbers
here-
that change only.
There's one here, it looks like it's 10 to October 2nd, 2005. I don't know whether you all have copies.
Did
but
that have a
it's-
line item for minus $69,000, 510 for design fees?
Now, that one changed after our meeting, Jim, on 10/5. So there's a version after that date that's been updated.
All right, but as we go forward tonight, we're going to need to know what this number is.
Sure.
Does anybody have it? Do you have it? Can you provide it? Do you have a sheet? Can we Xerox it or hand it around, or? I mean, there's a document here that says the owner's
I can pull it up
cost,
on my computer.
Is on the J drive?
owner's costs are $886,601, including $323,000 of contingency, $170,000 of insurance, architectural and structural 83, MEP engineer 33, so acoustical engineer 4,600, landscape designer 9,000, AE and structural for the course of the project 96,000, additional AE fees 30,000. I mean, we can't really look at it. We can look at a draft GMP tonight, but we're also interested in the budget, total project budget. So somehow we got to get to that. I don't want to interrupt you now, but let's keep going with your presentation. Sorry.
Okay. So after Exhibit A is Exhibit B, which is all the contract documents that were given up to us by DeStefano and Chamberlain, as well as all the specification sections.
Why don't you take us back to where you were? We don't know, we just make believe we don't know what you're talking about, which,
Okay. Project
Might be far
requirements
from the
summary
mark.
sheet, is everyone there? What sheet are you on? Are you
we
still on?
we just been through discussing
JP?
your list of trade contractors and trying to figure out the validity of the list. And you're saying, before we drifted off, which was my fault, onto contingency, you were saying that these are the numbers and they've been vetted out, they work with each other. Between and among these contractors, you get a complete project as designed, and you have confirmed this bid extension with the exception of one who you're comfortable with.
Correct.
Okay. So this is the result of the public bidding process.
Correct.
So then you were about ready to take us to project requirements?
Yep, project requirements are on the next sheet. That's everything that is included for us to run a job site. Dumpsters are on here, we have project photographs, temporary signage for the site, things like winter conditions, fencing relocations, copier charges, our job site trailer, furniture for the trailer, data, internet, and so forth.
Given the size and complexity of this project, is this an appropriate presentation? Is it high, low?
It would be what would be expected for 10 months, being on the job site for 10 months.
How do you manage this as far as the building committee is concerned? Do you put together a budget and then you track it?
Yes. Anything that gets billed would have to go to one of these line items.
Okay. Go ahead.
What's that? Did you want to go over this anymore?
No, I'm just, next page.
Okay. Our GC summary is on the next page. This is the costs for staffing. This is done through what labor rates are for 2014, 15, and 16.
And you're assuming this is a 10-month project?
Correct.
That sound reasonable to the committee? After Steve?
No, I do, and is there time in here to close out the project? Is that part of the 10 months?
Yes.
Is that included? And what's the distribution of, I see its quantity is 10 and the unit is months, but what's the distribution as far as concentration of people on this list that we can expect to have? I assume that purchasing, for example,
Isn't full-time.
doesn't get paid $3 a month, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so what level of effort can we expect from these level of people over the 10 months?
These are based on percentages that we do internally with the staffing matrix. I don't know off the top of my head exactly what those numbers are, but like project accountant is based on 10% roughly of their time. And those are all based on the size of the project and the duration.
Right, but who do we expect to have full-time on this project? And what's here represented full-time?
Project manager, project superintendent are the two full-time people that would be on this job.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Quick question. So this is all assuming a 10-month project. If the project winds up taking 12 months instead of 10, do we have an additional 2 months of billing, or is this the total cost regardless of whether it's a 10-month project or a 12-month project?
If time extension, I believe, I'm going to let Ken take over on this one, but our contract, I believe, is if we do have time extension, then there would be
So if-
extra fees.
If the job, it takes longer and nothing has changed in it, the drawings are still the same, the building's still the same, and nothing has changed, but it takes longer, that risk is on Shawmut. If there is a change, or something happened that changes the design or changes the work, or there is a hurricane or whatever it was to extend the duration, that would be a change order that would go back to town of Fairfield for the longer duration.
So weather-related issues would wind up costing the town more?
Or change orders, I mean, if.
Or,
you wanna
right,
add
obviously, if we change
level
something,
to the building, or-
Decisions on a timely basis.
right, okay. So, all
Something to
right,
track.
Okay, so there is some subjectivity, and there is also some downside risk, I guess. Okay, okay.
But you bring up a good point as far as tracking it monthly.
Monthly.
Yeah, to make sure that we don't get hit.
Right.
Right, which, Jim, if I may, which goes back to the point, once you guys go through, I see a schedule in here, is if there's any float in the schedule for winter weather or the like. I know it's starting in March, so once we get there, that will also help us understand if it's truly 10 months without a day of float, then we have to be a little bit more cautious.
Okay, we're looking forward to Exhibit B.
Exhibit B is just all the drawing lists and the specification lists that went out to bid, and the dates that are on the drawings for reference, and the specifications. And also the addenda that went out to bid as well. There were 2 addenda in the first bid and 1 in the second.
So you have a list of allowances as the next item, Exhibit C?
Exhibit C is, yes, the allowance summary sheet. And these are all the allowances that are included in the GMP.
So if I see an allowance on Exhibit C, that's the allowance you're referring to on the draft GMP, is that right? In other words, on this schedule over here, excuse me, let's take on the general trades you have, including allowances, there's no number. Under most of these, you have the word including allowances. On electrical, on
That is
HVAC,
correct.
you have including allowances.
That is correct. That is
So
including
the allowances that we see on Exhibit C are embedded in these numbers, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I want to clarify. Thank you.
So this means, as far as the scope of work is concerned, that if there was additional mechanical work above and beyond what's been bid, that there's a $10,000 allowance for that work?
Basically, this $10,000 is in their base bid, but it is in there.
Whose base bid?
We'll just go by electrical, because that's an easy one. The allowance is in their base bid to manage any existing fixtures that may be damaged from sitting there with no conditioned space for however many years it's been. Now, as I said earlier, the space is dry, but it isn't conditioned. There are battery packs associated with certain emergency lights that are probably bad because it got so cold in there, especially last winter. But other things in terms of ballasts, they might be fine because ballast can get cold without getting ruined. And this allowance is in there to manage how much that could be. So the subcontractor can't basically come out with an arbitrary number and say, hey, this cost me $25,000 to fix. This is going to be something we manage. I want to know how many of these fixtures are bad. I want to know how much each fixture costs, and that cost of replacing those fixtures is going to come out of this allowance. And then anything over this allowance is contingencies.
Anything under is
Back to the town. Or the best that I can use it to get a better building for you.
Excuse me 1 minute. What did you come up with when you added up the total contingency?
$6,896,000.
Not 6.
the actual
Six.
contingency.
Total contingency.
Oh, the 323 plus the 269?
Is that what it is?
Yeah, those are the 2 numbers that you gave me, 323, 302, plus 269, 794.
Thank you.
593,
Yeah.
096. That's about, I thought it was like 586.
Yeah, okay. All right, does everybody understand what these allowances are all about?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, Mark,
Yes, sir.
over here. So just so I'm clear, these allowances are in addition to anything specifically shown on the drawings?
Correct.
Like if the lighting plan shows a dozen fixtures to be replaced or repaired,
Correct.
it's not taken out of this number, that's an extra?
Anything addition to the drawings.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just so I know, the 69,170, that you say it's included in the GMP, what line item would that be included in? Individuals?
Yeah.
In each division.
Okay.
In the left column where it says division, it's in those bid packages.
So
Okay.
this is unscoped cost?
It would be an example, I guess.
Unscoped allowance for work that's over and beyond what is shown on the plan.
Is it in the form, is it a form of contingency?
It could be considered a form of contingency, but it's there for us to be able to control the subcontractor prior to using the contingency.
Okay, so it's at your discretion.
Yes.
And just for the record, some of these items we actually asked for in the bid documents, because we knew there'd be a high likelihood we would need the money.
Okay. So it's a cushion. Probably a risky word, but, okay. Everybody understand that we move on to the next exhibit?
But if,
I have a
granted, if
There's
the,
a question? Go ahead.
So I understand these allowances, I don't mean to go backwards, but we have one trade package that's also a true allowance on top of it, right, landscaping?
Correct.
So how is that publicly bid and competitively bid if it's just a whole allowance? Was it, I mean, you have a vendor next to it, was that,
It's a very good question. If it's just an allowance, I'm not sure.
The vendor actually, he bid the plans and specifications. The plans included an allowance and alternate pricing. So we have actual bids from a landscaper that,
so do we have any rough idea of what the 30,000 will buy us?
yeah, that's shown on the documents as to what area that $30,000 is to be used for.
And we have breakout costs for each plant. Like,
Okay,
this
right,
plant
'cause we have
costs
the-
this much per plant. And really, it's going to allow the flexibility to, really for the architect to say, all right, how many plants can I buy? What can I get best bang for my buck that's going to look decent where we plant them for $30,000?
Okay.
And with the breakout costs at bid time, you get the best cost you can get for them. If you ask for the cost after bid, he's not going to give you as much back.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Yeah.
quick question? So the unit prices for all the items that were asked for, will those be included in the GMP as a reference document or exhibit?
We can add that, put those on the side, sure.
Okay.
The landscaping?
That's all in the public documents that, I'm sorry, Steve.
I'm sorry. What unit, what other, was it landscaping specifically or other
Well,
unit prices?
for example, on the last page that they'll get to has the alternates that aren't part of the GMP, so those are the 4 landscaping alternates. But in addition to that, we asked for like per plant prices to get as much out of the 30,000 as we could.
If the unit prices are going to, anything that's going to impact the GMP and the management of the GMP should be included in the GMP addendum.
It should be another exhibit.
Yeah. You need the full story. We through with allowances for the moment?
Were there any other unit prices in the bid
think there were.
documents other than?
Electrical?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
We've agreed that that'll be part of the final GMP, an exhibit,
Yes.
okay? Should we move on?
and to note that if these allowances aren't used, they come back to the town.
Correct.
Okay.
I haven't gotten even, we haven't discussed the management of the contingency or that kind of,
Right.
okay.
Okay.
Is that? You want to take us through Exhibit D?
Sure. Exhibit D are all the GMP assumptions and clarifications. I don't know if you want me to read every one of them.
I'd like to have you go down, and you don't have to read every one of them, but I'd like the committee to read through each one, and then comment if they have any comments. You could say, does anybody have comments on one? Give us a chance to read it.
Sure. One is kind of standard, that work hours are per the construction schedule in a contiguous fashion.
Is that typical? And you know, what are the, you're talking 7 to 5, or?
Yeah, actually, I
What do you
believe
assume?
there is an ordinance where we can't start before 7 o'clock, so yeah, I think it's 7 to 3:30, or if extended hours would be 7 to 5, but nothing before 7.
Well, the equipment that you're parking in front of my colleague's house, like overnight, you're going to start it before 7, or
No, we're going to start it at 5.
5?
Oh, you must be the same guys that built the last time.
Okay,
These
continue.
guys would start at 5 if they could, but no, 7 o'clock start.
So, item 2, comments on item 2?
Yeah, I got one.
Yep.
how much do you store materials on site as you're going through the project? Because what would concern me is that if you're, got a lot of lumber or a lot of electrical or HVAC equipment that's being stored on site, is having fencing going to be enough, or would you be wise to have an additional security measure, based on what you've experienced with other projects around?
Well, from what I've experienced, I don't believe demographically the area is a rough area in terms of people breaking into construction sites. We aren't going to have a lot of copper. That's the main thing that people are going after in construction sites, are copper. They cut copper out of walls. They'll do anything which can completely paralyze a construction job. So with moving the building and being able to secure the existing building, we're just demoing out the locker wing. I don't see that being a high risk. Also, rebuilding the locker wing has no copper as well.
Okay.
And any PVC tubing. And even, if there wouldn't be much. And it's not a non-conditioned space. So I don't see that being much of a problem. Most of our large contractors, probably the general trades guy, is going to want a Connex box that's lockable out there. We already have a Connex box that's locked, that has the curtain wall in there right now, that's locked and safe.
From a I'm sorry, yeah, another question?
No, I'm good.
From a liability point of view, is this fencing and the gating we're going to have, is that standard in a construction site? So if someone gets hurt, and if we have to defend ourselves, this is the normal protocol?
Yes, it's going to be a 6-foot-high fence with
Because there's a lot of kids, as you're aware, this is an area where kids love to go, and I'm assuming there's
lockable gates.
And it has plenty of signage on it, warning people not to go into there. And basically, it's like any other condition where you have a sign that says "Do not enter there."
So let me ask the question, does this assume a full perimeter fencing?
Yes, it does.
Is it tarped? I mean, is it open, like an open web fence, or are you putting up a
Screen?
wind screen?
Screen.
So it's chain link fence,
With lockable gates, 6 feet
Screening.
high.
lockable gates, no sandbagged flat bases, these are concrete around the pole, or what? This is not temporary fencing from A to Z temporary fencing or something that has those crummy square pipe feet on them that tip over. You're saying, I don't know whether you're saying yes or no.
No, I'm listening to you.
Well, I mean, what do we got? What'd you buy? What's in the on the job? Because this is definitely a sore point. We need to make sure that site is secure, especially if you have a building up on shoring. Kids are going to want to climb on it, or cribbing. They're going to want to climb on it. They're going to want to get in it and be above everybody else like a tree fort. So what do we got?
It's a rental fence that is not driven into the ground. It's stationary, temporarily stationary.
With the sandbags?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would just submit to the committee that it's not a secure fence.
Well, again, I am concerned from a liability point of view, and maybe we would have the town's risk manager take a look, because again, I assume this is a Fairfield site, and if somebody gets hurt, the town of Fairfield is going to be sued, and we certainly don't want to have a situation where they'll demonstrate that this was not adequate security.
All right, will you review that?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
I guess, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would you prefer that if we didn't have the scribbling on the side of it, is that an issue? Is there an issue with the wind and things like that? Or is it better just to have it open chain link?
Speaking my personal opinion, given that it's in a residential neighborhood, I would think that the windscreen would be preferred by the residents.
At least on the street side.
Yeah, on the street side,
okay.
yeah.
So what we can take a look at, if we'll determine the cost, because there's a cost associated with that, maybe
Sure.
we can trade it out and balance it out so that we can do the driven and just have open chain link fence and not spend the money on the scribbing.
Okay.
Okay?
You want to be able, for security purposes, when the police are doing their drive-bys, maybe the gate wouldn't be screened. There's got to be some way that they can
Sure.
look
Understand.
into it. Okay. Please continue.
Number 3 is pest and rodent control. We do not have in the GMP. I don't see there being any rats down there. I don't know, Ian. Ian, you know best. You ever seen any run around down there?
Just two-legged ones.
I knew that was coming.
Let's see.
Twig, no building permit fee typical?
We wait for,
Okay,
have to get a permit, but we wait for fees.
okay.
Can I get that for my house too, Twig?
As long as you're on the committee.
Just to back up a little bit, the site, there's no video recording or video monitoring of the site either. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
Next item?
Number 5, all warranties and guarantees with the duration from date of acceptance / substantial completion shall be directly between the owner and the vendor subcontractor / vendor. Shawmut Construction will be available to assist you guys in coordinating any warranty and guarantee obligations per contract.
Andy, what's the final step after substantial completion? Completion? When, or maybe I should direct that to Kevin.
Final completion. So substantial completion ties into different milestones, such as the start of warranties, I believe, and
the town of Fairfield doesn't want to deal with all this unless the project is finally completed in their hands and occupied. Up to that point.
It's just a standard industry benchmark that's used, for example, with applications for payment, release of retainage, things like that. Doesn't mean the town's getting something that's not fully complete. I mean, the trade contractors in Shawmut still have to complete the project. So I'm not really sure what your question is, I guess.
If I may, Jim?
Yeah.
I think you'd have to go back to what the contract says, because there's two different terms here. Date of acceptance,
That's kind of what I'm...
maybe, I don't know if this contract has you, Kevin, issuing
Well, I think
a
date of
cer-
acceptance is probably too vague a term and should just be stricken. It should just be substantial completion, I
And
would
we-
think.
and I wonder if the contract had-
Because we're not looking to occupy or use parts of the building prematurely, I don't think, on this project. So it should probably just be substantial completion.
And I wonder if C of O is tied to substantial completion in the
It-
contract.
It is.
It is?
Right.
TCO.
Yes.
Sometimes
Oh,
there are
no,
phased
no
projects
TCO.
where it's...
Drop that.
What's it?
Well, you usually get a TCO, and you don't get the full CO till a year after it's opened, in most cases, in most towns that I've worked in. You get a
this is
TCO to open the building, you will not get a
This is
certificate.
a...
But I'm not,
Let
I
me
haven't worked in
explain to you where
Fairfield.
we're coming from in Fairfield, CO. So, and even though it's January, it's actually, will work out just fine, but I don't think after the experience the town had with the existing building, you're going to go for a TCO.
As long as the building department's good with that, we're good with it,
Well,
too.
you may not be good with it because it's a higher threshold, you know? I mean, it's great to get a TCO, but we don't need a TCO in that particular juncture. We want a finished project. So we can talk about it, but what the intent of this, I hate to belabor this, but we belabor everything else, that the purpose of this clause is to what? Shift the risk and burden from the town to you, from you to the town? What does this really mean? Item 5.
So this clause is to just shift the warranty period from when the town's going to be using the building and occupying the building, then the warranties for the mechanical equipment, the light fixtures, that's when the warranty starts. So if it's going to be on December 1st, when the building is CO'd, the warranties start on that date, and then the town takes ownership of the building and then handles the warranties.
This is poorly worded. No? Or am I just...
I think probably you need the town attorney to look at this.
Well-
Because quite frankly,
Perhaps it just needs to be vetted by purchasing
Yeah.
and the town
Yeah,
departments.
let's pass. I agree. If you just clear that up.
Right.
It doesn't, I know what you're trying to say, but it's a little awkward.
For example, like, we're doing a project for the city of Stamford now. It's a salt shed and a garage and so forth. The salt shed, they're going to occupy as soon as they can to get salt in it. So the warranties for anything in there would start when they start to occupy it, whereas the rest of the project won't be done until 6 months from now. So that's why you would have something like this as a provision.
But I interpret it to be that once the warranty period starts, Shawmut's demobilized. If I have a mechanical problem, I'm calling the mechanical subcontractor. I'm not calling Shawmut to get my
That's
issue
the way I
dealt
read
with.
That's,
Right,
yes.
so it's not about the whole I understand what you're
Yes.
saying, Kevin, with partial occupancy or phased. So I think that's what this means, that the person providing the guarantee to Shawmut, to the town, we have to go around Shawmut to the vendor after Shawmut's gotten C of O on the project.
And that's typically how warranties work. Like, the roofing warranty is with the roofing manufacturer. So the town would deal directly with the roofing manufacturer if there was a defect
Right.
in the
No,
material.
I think it's standard as well, to be honest with you. I mean, that's probably the part of the final submittals are in the contract, which I don't know, which is the listing and all the warranties and guarantees and all that turnover.
When,
Twig has a question.
yeah, Twig.
This is standard language in most of our contracts, and I believe in all the GMPs, without having gone back and reading all of them. And some of them, what we will say, we'll fine tune it to a point where we sync the acceptance and warranty period with final commissioning on a building after everything is done and it's fully used and useful and so forth. And as far as TCOs and substantial completion and so forth, most of our projects and our contracts are written around schools where we accept, we wanted TCO and we want substantial completion so we can get the students into the school. And so it is used in useful space, and then we worry about the punch list and all that stuff later on.
I don't want the town of Fairfield having to deal with any warranty coordination or guarantee coordination or getting people back prematurely. I mean, I don't think we want to be in that business. If the certificate of occupancy is in place, the town has accepted the building, and the CO is in place, and the warranties are running, and there's a problem, then it's the town's building. I just think that ought to be, and the town would chase down the contractor or the supplier. But I think that line has to be well-defined. We can talk about it, or if you would just
Yeah, we can
address
talk
it.
offline with Shawmut, but
Yep.
one of the things that we may want to look at doing is to see how long we hold the retainage after accept project.
That's a different issue, but yeah, okay.
That might give us a little bit of leverage to, if we need some help with warranty or we need contractors to come back in, if there's a warranty issue.
I'm used to seeing a clause where the warranties and guarantees have a specific date when they start.
I think that's per the contract.
I would have to review our specs, but I think it's actually worded in the specs
way?
how it works,
Okay.
which
Well,
I
then-
believe is the substantial completion date.
All right, then, let's do it that way. That's the way they bid it. Let's make sure that it's coordinated with the specs, if you just do that.
Sure.
That would take us to item 6.
Item 6 is just processing things that go to the architect in a timely fashion, 2 weeks for shop drawings. Early release submittals will require a week turnaround. Those would be quick items that we need back from Kevin, just approval of product.
That work with you, Kevin?
I don't plan to sit on anything on my desk. We'll turn it right around. We might just want to clarify whether it's business days or calendar days, but I think I'm being picky.
No, you're not.
I know you're not.
Plenty of arguments over that.
Yeah.
Business days is probably appropriate.
And will Shawmut deliver a schedule to the architect relative to what is a, early release submittal, or is it just, is there a how do you define an early release submittal? If I was Kevin, I'd want to know.
Early release submittal would usually be things like rooftop units and stuff, which we really don't have on this project. Anything long lead time items on this project, maybe light fixtures, there's, the exhaust fans for the bathroom. So those certain types of things we'd want to get going quicker.
I understand the types of things you're talking about, but if you were putting me on a week turnaround, I'd want to know what you're talking about, but it's up to you.
I don't think it's anything we can't handle.
Okay.
so.
But more important than that, what's the significance of failure to meet the 1 week? You see, a lot of this stuff, the thing that concerns me now, we're reading this thing, and if anything goes wrong, later on they're going to say, well, we showed this to you. You had the opportunity to say this was a problem. You never said anything. What is the significance of missing the 1 week or the 2 weeks? That means that the architect has financial liabilities, Shawmut has liabilities, or the town. Can someone tell me what the significance of meeting a deadline?
Well, I could try to answer that. any construction manager has to make assumptions in their schedule, how long it's going to take from the time they submit something for approval to an architect and when they get back. And it's not uncommon if, on a job, if the architect takes too long to look at something, that the contractor wants to be paid extra for a delay in the job.
And whose responsibility as a result of that delay? Is it our responsibility, yours, or Shomit? That's what I want to understand.
Ultimately, anything that's an extra charge goes to the town. And if at the end of the job, the town felt that I did a poor job as the architect and led to all these extra charges, they could come back against me.
I'm not talking about a poor job, I'm talking about missing a deadline.
It's more of a collective thing. It's not like any one thing is going to cause
Okay.
the scale to tip. But at the end of the job, if every single submittal sat on my desk 2 weeks longer than it should have, I would expect to be getting some kind of
Right.
claim from the town of Fairfield.
And I know, 90% of my business is disputes, and everyone's happy at the beginning of a job, and then I understand maybe we're being overly cautious, but yes, it's a delay, and then we fight over who's responsible for the delay, and then we go in and, Kevin was on vacation and no one looked at it, and we got whatever piece of equipment. I just, I think there should be some submittal schedule. Is that in your specs, that they have to provide you with a submittal schedule? Okay.
Yes, we asked for that.
Just to make sure, because we all nod our heads, but I think to answer David's question, that's exactly what happens.
And many things have financial consequences for missing a deadline.
Yes.
And
This is delay, and you could say the consequences would be to extend, the schedule would end up being 3 or 4 weeks over, and we'd be dipping into contingency to pay them because they were only their schedule was 10 months, not
Right.
11.
Which goes back to my earlier question as to
Yes.
when, if it goes longer than 10 months, and as they've answered, it depends on the reason why.
But if they had a schedule such as Steve is suggesting, and they both agreed to it, both parties agreed to it, then that's how they stick with it, that's how they discipline. You find out right in the beginning whose fault it was, if the deadline was missed. But you're comfortable with this? This is a small project? We're
I'm not
beating
seeing
it up.
anything so far that's anything out of the ordinary in my view.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on, if that's all right. 7, tax exempt.
Correct? Any questions
True.
on that?
Twig.
That's correct.
8,
This is just work that is included, shown on the drawings and described in the specifications. Conflicts and omissions are not included in the GMP. The cost of, do you want to move on, Jim?
whoa. This is,
Lack of coordination, what does that mean?
what, the first sentence, we've included the work as shown in the drawings. I mean, isn't that a given? What am I missing? We need that? We need to know that? That you're committing to that? What?
Yes.
Okay,
And the specifications that went out to bid.
all right, I get that. And then this trailing sentence, conflicts or omissions, including lack of coordination? What kind of coordination? Coordination of the drawings?
Most likely on our side would be coordination between architectural and ownership. Things that wouldn't have to do with construction.
Can you give us some examples?
You change your mind and you want to move the bathrooms, and you don't want them where they're located.
Would that be considered a change order?
It depends. If we could get all the documents and how we're going to build it according to our schedule, and it was, we had no time impact, absolutely. If it caused a time impact, then it's a different story.
Well, in other words, we prepared a set of bid documents that has all the trades work on there. If we forgot to include something in there, it would not be included in their price. That would be an extra. Does that answer it a different way? That might make sense.
Sort of, kind of. What concerns me is how vague it is, because conflicts and omissions are not included. Conflicts between who? Between which parties? If you're talking about between the building committee in terms of the project that we've approved and you as the construction group, that's one thing. If you're talking about you and Kevin getting your signals crossed, which has happened, that's something entirely different. It doesn't specify between which parties. So that's something I would want fleshed out, because it's one thing if we're giving you change orders down the line, but if there's something that's messed up because, somebody in this group here got their signals crossed, that's something entirely different, and that's not something that should be borne by the town. So, that needs to be fleshed out a little bit, please.
Yeah,
I think that paragraph needs to be probably expanded and a little more attention
Well-
given to it. I guess I have an overall question. In addition to this, is there a contract that will also be executed between you guys and the town, or is it's covered by your existing contract?
Correct.
I mean, the committee may just wish to look at the existing contract between Shawmut and the town, which may also address a lot of these items.
Correct.
And if that's so, then there should be a clause in here saying that that contract is specifically incorporated into the GMP document.
Well, actually, I think it's the reverse. This
The other way
is
around.
a reference document to that contract.
I don't know what contract they're under, typical 133, what contract was used, an AAA document?
Yeah, they're all AIA contracts.
133 and a 201, yep.
133 and 201? So, you definitely, I mean, the main concern here an owner has is that the addendum, the GMP addendum doesn't change the base contract. It's my understanding, Steve, that the GMP will take precedent at the GD addendum to the contract. If there's a conflict between the contract and the GMP document, which prevails?
I'd have to look at the order of precedence, but it's typically the contract prevails.
Usually in the contract,
Yeah,
it tells you
it's
what,
typically-
what
Order?
The order of precedence is.
Order of precedence? Okay.
There may be items on this list that should just be struck because they're already addressed in the contract. I mean, you don't
That's
want to...
just what I was thinking.
You don't want to duplicate them
And
either.
that's why they're clarifications and assumptions.
Right.
They typically follow the original contract document.
I mean, to this one note, I read it differently, and I think I understand where some of the confusion's coming from. It's not conflicts between parties, it's conflicts in elevation conflicts, HVAC coordination conflicts between the
Yeah,
trade.
typically between the disciplines.
Well, that's what it should say.
I think that's where some of the confusion may be coming in.
Yeah.
It's not arguing with parties.
Okay.
It's design and drawing conflicts.
We did ask lots of RFIs during the design process and things like that to try to help that part. It's just to cover, just as an example, it's not on this project, a roof drain. For instance, sometimes a roof drain can be shown on the roof, but maybe there's no piping to it that gets it all the way into the civil drawing. That's a conflict between disciplines and an omission. We didn't engineer or track every line item to make sure that it connected every dot. So that's just kind of that general statement. It's a general statement that we use a lot because it just covers us there. We didn't go and verify that the roof drain is connected all the way to the civil system.
Well, if you're talking about the contract documents, I can understand it. If you're talking about conflicts and omissions between the parties, this won't stand.
No,
We won't accept it.
It's between the trades.
Between
Okay.
the architect and all the engineers and consultants.
All
That's what you're
Then it
trying
has
to
to be
say.
clarified. Twig, is there a protocol in town about this document and the contract being reviewed by the town attorney, or is it left up to either purchasing, or how does it work?
The town attorney reviewed all the base contracts, the 133 and the 201, and typically we have an oversight for the GMP as well.
So the way our schedule is set up is we are hoping to approve the draft GMP tonight, and then we have 2 weeks before we get to the final before this body, this committee.
Yes.
So in that interim period,
I'll have
somebody will look at it?
Yes. But what I'd like to do is be able to send whatever is modified or discussed tonight to council.
Okay. And next item, if there's no objection, payment performance.
PMP bond is included. These are sub-PMP bonds. Anything over $100,000 has to have a PMP bond, anything under does not.
Is Shawmut required to post a payment performance bond?
They are.
Okay. Ken?
10, this includes asbestos, PCB, mold, and hazardous materials removing. All assumptions are that there's no hazmat on site.
Okay.
11,
Committee should be aware that there could be mold.
That's the only one I'd be worried about. It's
Yeah.
on
Can I Can I ask one question? I'm sorry, step back. What's the protocol? I'm thinking about the landscaper now who has a contract with an allowance of 30. If we are so fortunate as a committee to add through the alternates back and that contract goes above 100, which it could, do they, in arrears, do we ask for a payment performance bond at the time when we add change orders it goes over 100?
Typically don't.
So we don't have to worry about a cost of a bond from that subcontractor because we're not,
Ordinarily, we would not, Steve, only because in this case, it would be the tail end of the job, so we're going to make sure that they're going to do the work. And if we're adding to it, there's a certain assumption that they've got stuff in the ground.
okay, I'm just asking because it's one thing that's not carried and it could happen
You're correct, it could.
with this one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move along.
Number 11, perform the work in accordance with design set forth in the contract documents. However, we assume no responsibility for the compliance of the design with applicable codes, local standards, and the authorities having jurisdiction. Basically, it says if there's something that isn't to code on the drawings and we have to change something because we're called out by the building officials, then we're covered.
Whose responsibility would that be? If we miss something?
Code compliance?
The architect or you people? Who would it be?
That would be the designers.
Generally, designers, I mean, it does depend what it is. If, for example, a tradesman mounted something at the wrong height, because he didn't follow our drawings, obviously, that would be a trades issue.
Yeah, that's an error, not code.
Right.
Well, you're specifically making reference to no responsibility for the compliance of design with applicable codes. If the exit light is misplaced, that is your responsibility.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
understand that.
If they say put it at 12 feet and he puts it at 11, that's on us.
We're going to face situations where the building inspector and the fire marshal are going to make their own decisions on the fly in the building.
Yeah,
Because-
right, and sometimes the design-wise, you don't know, they may come through at the end and want more. Exactly, when they come in at the end, you don't know, they may add more of the lighting. The fire marshal may come in and add 3 or 4 more. We've indicated and we've included what's on the drawings, and Kevin's designed it to be that way, but you don't know until the very end. For holding up a CO or something, he may want 3 more lights. That would be a change order.
And 9 times out of 10, that happens. The fire marshal adds an exit sign. It's still designed to code. It's
Right.
just what the fire marshal wants, and that's what the fire marshal gets.
And that code is heavy interpretation. And usually the AHJ is the last standing person who's going to...
But
Okay.
for the committee, Kevin, the building department, the fire marshal have seen these drawings before they went out to bid already, correct?
Yes, we've gotten a sign-off from the fire marshal. He added like a page of boilerplate things that he expects to see, most of which were already on the drawings.
Okay.
And every department has signed off on the project except sewer, because they won't even look at it until the sewer line's cut, and building.
So the building, then the committee relies on your interpretation of the code that's in the contract documents at the moment. The question is, I think, coming down the table is, has the building department reviewed this, and is there any comment regarding the code, like you can't put this door here, or those stairs won't work there, or?
So the building department has gotten copies of the drawings, and although we haven't gone back in for the permit because we were waiting to see where the project would head, I don't believe he had any comments from a code review standpoint. That's not to say that when I walk in for the final building permit signature from Mr. Conley that he won't have additional items, but I'm not aware of any.
I suppose as a general statement, we're hiring someone to build a building. We should not be required to know these things. Why are you not responsible? It troubles me anytime you say, we're not responsible for this. The question is, why wouldn't you be responsible, and why would we ever be responsible for any of these things? In other words, it seemed to me in a contract, you should be responsible for this. That shouldn't be, we assume all responsibility. That's what we're paying you for. Now, again, maybe I'm being naive, but it troubles me when I see something that says you're not responsible for something. The implicit in that is we're responsible. So how do we determine, how do we reduce our responsibility?
Typically,
We hire someone to do that?
we have. He's already here. We already hired him, and he's sitting here tonight. The drawings, the final documents are supposed to be code compliant.
So then it should say, we are not responsible, but he is responsible.
Well,
No,
that's-
no.
No?
So on any job, the owner, the person who's paying for the job, is the biggest risk holder. The town of Fairfield here is holding the bag. And so the first line of what happens on a project, if there are extra costs, the town has to pay for them. That's why we have contingencies. Now, at the end of the job, if the town feels that we missed too many things and didn't live up to the standard of care of our profession, the town could seek recourse against us. That doesn't mean that we pay for things. That the town still has the checkbook, and the town is still the one paying for the project. And it's always going to be that way. It's like that in every other project.
I accept what you say, it still troubles me.
No, I don't accept it. I don't think the town holds the bag as the highest risk holder. I think I think, and the record should show, at least in my opinion as chair, that the risk is spread out amongst the three players, constructor, designer, and owner, depending on what the issue is. It's common in the trade or in the industry, to your point, that the designer and engineer are producing for bid code-compliant drawings. There's certainly plenty of cases where the building inspector will interpret the code differently than the architect and engineer. In that case, it could be at a cost to the committee. But somebody has to produce documents that are code compliant. I believe what the construction manager is saying, it's not their job to
design the project?
Design the project
No,
or
of course
comply.
not.
It's their job to comply with the contract documents. Their assumption is the contract documents comply with the code.
So back into my point is, there should be someone responsible. We should be the port of last resort.
That's true.
And I read this to say we are the court of last resort, and that troubles me.
I understand what David's saying. I think if we look back at this GMP submission in total, what this is saying is, in the number that is in front of you, I cannot determine as Shawmut what may not be code compliant in the drawings, which will therefore be subject to a price increase. I think that's what this is, assumption and clarifications are for.
That's exactly what that is.
That isn't what it says, but that's what you're trying to say.
Right. And, you know, the local jurisdiction here in town, you can't read his mind. You don't know exactly what he's going to want. You know, Kevin may have designed a completely code-compliant project. We've installed it completely per code for the requirements. But, you know, again, like David said, too, fire marshal can come in here, he can add things to it. We don't know what those things he's going to add, but there is going to be a cost to it, and we haven't included that cost in the GMP. And it could be a $3,000 item, it could be a $10,000 item. But
I
having local, you know,
I suppose the word "no" is what hangs up. It says we accept no responsibility. If it said we accept partial responsibility, I would move on. But I'm not going to delay it anymore because I'm sure it's going to stay no. I'm just
Oh,
unhappy about
it's
it.
poorly written and has to be revised.
This may be another example of something that's probably covered very well in the contract, and maybe shouldn't be duplicated in an
Well, then
exclusion.
let's hope it is. Go ahead.
So this is a coordination issue, Twig, or town attorney,
Between the contracts, yes.
on this, yeah. Next one?
Next one's number 12. We're assuming that DeStefano and Chamberlain is going to be friendly and share their CAD files with us.
Absolutely. Whatever you need, you got.
Why, thank you.
Next.
13, this assumes that all warranties will commence upon substantial completion.
Shouldn't that be
Yeah.
CO?
Well, that's number 5 that we were discussing a while ago, so it's kind of covered twice.
Yeah, it belongs up, somehow 5 has to be redone, and this has to be...
I like number 13 better. Simple.
14, work performed by the owner and owner subcontractors will be done in a timely fashion and will not interfere with the construction or delay of the project. And that's actually pretty important to this project itself with the work that the town's doing in the parking lot.
Okay?
Everyone
ahead.
good with that? Move on. 15, this proposal assumes the following services/items will be provided by the owner at no cost to Shawmut Design and Construction: electrical service, utility consumption, water service, utility, gas service, utility, snow removal outside of our construction areas, and security services for watchmen.
So if there has to be a temporary power to the site, that pole, meter, switchgear is on the, is the responsibility of the town?
Let me just clarify that. I think the temporary pole and meter and all that, your electrical contractor would provide, but the bill that comes in the mail would go to the
Let's clear
town.
it up, because that isn't what this says.
Yes, it is. It says,
Yeah,
it says
utility consumption.
Consumption.
It says consumption.
Just the consumption.
Electrical utility, gas utility, water consumption.
Well,
I'm not gonna
that's what it's
delay-
supposed to say.
I'm not going to delay this. It says here, at no cost to Shawmut Design and Construction, electrical service and utility consumption. I understand the town would pay for the utility bill if we agree to this. Who pays for the $2,600 to put the pole, the meter, and the switch?
For the permanent power?
For the temporary part. This is all temporary power. Same thing for gas. Whatever you've got here, is the town going to end up being, pay for the incoming service as well as the utility cost?
UI is paying for the permanent power coming into the site.
We're talking temporary.
We have, and we have the temporary panel in our GMP. But the permanent power coming into the site is by UI and by the town of Fairfield.
So in order to clarify this, this clause means that you're not paying for utility service consumed, right?
Correct.
Right.
It should say that.
Plus the permanent transformer
No,
wiring.
that's a different
of
story.
the building.
This is something that the owner's going to provide at no cost.
I think these items are probably described in the specs as far as what the owner pays for.
We'll
and
pay
what
for
the-
electrical consumption.
Yeah, most of these items are covered.
We'll pay for
in the
electrical
contract.
consumption. We're not going to pay for electrical service. It's a conflicting term. I agree. I see you shaking your head, and I understand there can be confusion over what service really means. But we're not paying for the service, according to Ken.
Right,
Sounds
you're
like we're
paying for the consumption only.
Okay.
Temporary service,
Temporary.
not the permanent.
Okay.
So to that are the soft costs, do we include the utility charges for this project as well as the UI
I
potential charges, Twig?
think I suggested putting them in there. I would have to go back and double check.
I can check
We
for you.
pay the consumption on all the other school projects.
And then do you have the agreement, or I shouldn't say that, does the town have the agreement with UI, or did you guys help with the agreement for UI to put in the permanent power? Where, because you're saying, Ken, that permanent power is done by UI.
The town holds the agreement, and we just coordinate with UI.
Okay, so it's nothing else we have to do to confirm that, okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And to an earlier point, on school construction projects, the town also pays for whatever service needs to be installed or any service upgrades or improvements.
For the permanent condition or temporary? For permanent,
And any temporary stuff. Especially the permanent, because that's seen as a permanent benefit, of course, and the town is reimbursed on it, so we want that included in the contract.
Well, the utility charges, Twig, are not included in the owner's cost. So we got to straighten this one out. What are we hearing? We're hearing the town picks up the cost for, typically on a construction site, the town picks up the cost for electrical and water, gas?
We pick up all the utility costs, the service and the consumption,
does that hit the project?
yes. And
So it's already-
all reimbursable.
All right, so the only thing that's,
Eligible for reimbursement.
the only thing that's missing here is on the schedule of owner's cost, there should be a number plugged in for electrical and water. right?
On the soft cost
On the
side.
Soft cost, yeah. Okay. Let's see if we can continue. 16?
The construction manager's contingency shall be used to cover any increases in the cost of the work as deemed necessary by the construction manager, which may occur during actual construction. Out-of-scope changes will be covered by an increase/decrease to the amendment. That's,
I'm going to take it one word at a time, one sentence.
What are you getting at with that? I have no idea what that means.
There's a cap in our contract of $20,000 that we're allowed to spend the money out of this bucket of money.
Okay.
Without prior approval from the building committee and then comes up that we feel that, is underneath the GMP, up to $20,000.
Now, does this relate strictly to the administrative work that's done by the construction manager, or like say the superintendent or whatever, or is this something that is also applicable to the trades?
This is something that we control, and, we control the cost, and it's all open book, and it'd be done on time and material, or a lump sum price for that extra work. And then we would issue the change order for that work, under the $20,000 amount.
Can I just ask one other question? Since I spend my whole life reading contracts, you refer to this amendment. Nowhere am I understanding that this is an amendment to the contract. So why did you use the word amendment in this clause?
This is an amendment to the contract.
The GMP.
The GMP.
So number 16 is an amendment to the contract?
This should read GMP proposal and addendum 1, or whatever it says in the contract. This is envisioned by the CM contract, the AAA 133. This whole thing is envisioned by that contract. Actually, it should say contract, not amendment.
Actually, this item too is actually in the contract between us and the town of Fairfield already.
So the use of the word amendment means what, Jim? If you just said to this contract, I was just wondering what the
Contract,
amendment
not
is.
amendment.
It should say at the very
Because
beginning.
this GMP is an amendment to the contract.
Right, that's what it should say.
Right.
Okay,
So we're
all right,
just
so what
stating
Jim
that.
says,
Yeah,
this
the cover
whole thing, the
page, actually.
GMP proposal is an amendment to the contract, and
It's
therefore...
I think, excuse me, go
I'm sorry, I
ahead.
apologize.
No. I think, to your point, or what just flew by here, I think it's called an amendment, 133, right? It's an amendment, or is it an addendum to the GMP?
This GMP is an amendment to the contract.
So this is
Because
supposed to be-
amendment, I take to mean that it's changing something that's in the existing contract, as opposed to
why
being
we're
something
here.
that's added onto it.
Such as an addendum.
Yeah, there's a difference between an
Yeah.
addendum and
The
an amendment.
AIA contract calls it out as amendment. It is an
Well, that's the
amendment.
language
And
specific
you
to
have to be
trade.
particularly careful, and the reason this prolonged agony tonight is because often the contract is changed by this document. You have to be very cautious.
Right.
They have to be coordinated by the owner to make sure that something hasn't changed to the benefit of either party. All right, let's just,
well,
we're going to be on 16. I'm just
Oh, okay,
adding.
okay.
Can I,
Yeah.
for my colleagues on the committee, in what my version of plain English of this, okay, so everyone understands, is that I take this to mean, which is also typical in the industry, it's not this, the wording of this clause, is that the contingency that's in the GMP is for Shawmut's use and its discretion, that we get to see what's happening every month when we have someone looking at it. However, if we ask to add extra work, it's not coming out of their contingency. That's what this clause is typical in the industry. So any scope change is not coming out of their contingency, even if there's contingency left. It'll come out of our contingency on the soft cost side.
So it's a matter of which bucket it's coming out of.
This is a typical clause, and I don't want to speak for Shawmut, but if you guys can confirm whether or not for my fellow committee members, this is saying our contingency in the GMP is for Shawmut's use,
All right, this
not
is,
for our use.
this is probably one of the most contentious parts of negotiation when it comes to this type of arrangement. There are owners who do not want to turn over carte blanche. They to the construction manager's contingency. They want to know how they're using it, why they're using it. So, and $20,000 is a significant threshold to be used and not accounted for. I mean, you obviously would account for it, but as far as permission or authority is
Percent of our
concerned.
contingency.
Yeah.
With a $250,000
Right.
contingency, 20%, 20,000 is 10%.
So, that said, the committee should understand what's going on here. There's a contingency for the construction manager in the amount of
259.
259? No,
269,000.
169,000.
794, right?
Their proposal under item 16 is that they have complete discretion over spending that contingency. There are owners who will agree to that, provided that they report on a monthly basis exactly the condition of that contingency, what's been spent, why, and so forth. There are owners who will say, you can only spend $5,000 without our permission because it's our money. There are owners who say, has been, I think, thought about here, you can spend $20,000 without notice. So it's up to, Steve, you can take it from here as far as your experience in different ways this is written, but I've never seen it written the same way twice.
No, but I think this is part of the contract, so we're kind of bound by the contract that we're in. I think we leave it up to the professionalism of Shawmut, who this committee and the town selected to be professional, as we know they are, to use it in a wise manner.
How would you like to see it reported?
I believe per the contract, they also have to report a contingency tracker every month, so we know where they're spending money. Again, this is an
true?
open,
Yes.
an open book GMP.
And backup paperwork.
If they provide a change order to the plumber that comes out of contingency, they're going to show that in their budget tracking so we understand what's being spent. The protection for the committee is that reporting and the open book nature of this contract. So we wouldn't expect to see 3 different change orders to the same contractor for the same scope at $19,000 apiece. There's also provisions in the contract so that it's just not under the threshold all the time. The other thing, I believe, as part of this contract is a contingency sharing. I don't know if the committee knows that. So there's an incentive for Shawmut not to spend any of the contingency because they receive an incentive, I believe it's 25% of what's left as a payment out of the contingency. So it's another incentive for Shawmut to be, strict with its contingency usage.
All right, is the committee familiar enough with this so we can move on, or?
Yeah. Steve, that's helpful.
Again, it'll be checked against the language of the contract.
It is.
Okay. 17?
17 are pre-construction costs prior to February 2015, which was the funding date, are not included in the GMP.
Okay.
18, we have not included any costs associated with any informational pickets, job actions by the labor organizations.
Are we apt to face that kind of a situation? Are you signatory to any of the trade unions?
Carpentry,
Carpenters?
yes. They're usually the ones that picket too.
Are there going to be any other issues? How's this project going to be run? It's a public project, prevailing wage project?
Yeah, you usually don't have any problems on public jobs because anybody can bid the job, and it strictly goes to the lowest qualified bidder. So the unions don't get all testy because of that. They know what the rules are in public bidding, and it isn't that Shawmut's not using our union carpenters, so we're going to go picket them. This is something where there's really no choice in the public domain.
So we don't get the rat?
I've never seen, I can't promise you that, but I've never seen any public job picketed before. And I've seen private jobs picketed many a times.
And we did solicit them.
We got the rat at Ludlow.
Why did you get the rat at Ludlow?
We got the rat at Ludlow because the structural steel contractor is not a union shop. And we ended up with the rat and had to set up, go to the 2-gate system, had to read the papers and, publicly stand on the sidewalk, read the papers, send the police to keep the picketers away from the students, all that sort of thing.
How long ago was that?
That was in 1 or 2, I believe, we were constructing that. And so the raft showed up at that. It's a big inflatable raft for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's about a 15-foot or 20-foot
That's
tall,
huge.
big gray rat.
Yes, and so it was a little bit of extra work to go to a 2-gate system to separate the union entrance from the non-union entrance, and there was a lot of oversight on the prevailing wage, payroll records and so forth by the unions. We ironically had the same contractor, steel contractor for Burr School, a little while later, but Burr School being where it is in a fairly remote location, the rat did not show up. So it's usually...
Or they were using them at some other job site.
It also assumes in here that pest and rodent control is not required.
It tends to, if it's going to show up, our experience is on steel, and it's on a highly visible job.
So, are you comfortable, if I can get your attention, are you comfortable with the fact that you can manage this project regarding any of these labor issues? Because it's not...
Yeah, we're very comfortable with that.
And we did solicit them. We sent it to our contractors, our union contractors, and gave them an opportunity. So if there is an issue, we would say, hey, we asked you to bid the job, and you chose not to do so.
Okay.
We didn't exclude them.
Any other, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next.
All right, 19, we have included performing the required field measurements per the contract documents have based our proposal on the dimensions and locations per the specific documents. However, this does not include any associated costs if the field verified dimensions substantially differ than the dimensions shown on the contract documents. And we will notify the architect of any such discrepancies.
Okay with that?
That would probably most likely have to do with surveying, the amount of fill you'd have to bring into a site. You know, if that's off a foot, you could talk about very high costs to bring something up higher a foot that was misdocumented.
Actually, no, that would be more like, I give a dimension on the drawings of 16 feet 2 inches verify in field, and it's actually 25 feet, and it was way off.
Okay.
You'd be entitled to extra money.
I think survey is one of the next items down.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on that?
I don't think that, again, there's contract language that...
Yeah, again, a lot of these things are probably already covered in the
Right.
contract.
No, I don't think, if there are no questions from the committee, we'll move on to the next one. 20?
There will be no reduction in general conditions, bond, insurance, and fees should there be monies remaining in the allowances upon completion of the project.
I mean, I think we should just look, at this one and the next one are probably per the contract, so
Yeah.
we got to see the order of precedence, because this may be changing the AIA document. So if it's in the document, we should just know if it's a change or not
Yeah,
before we
make
accept.
sure everybody's synced.
If this takes the precedence, then we should know, because this is a
Right.
bigger deal. This one in 21, I think.
Right.
And we can review that with
Yeah.
purchasing
Just a-
offline.
22, if the project starts prior to March 1st, does that make any difference?
Ken?
No, we're not sure, I mean, if actually we'll start work prior to that, depending on the winter months and the weather.
If
But
your authorization to,
we're giving you approval before that, no. Wouldn't.
we want to accelerate it and move it up a month, that's not a problem.
They'll still hold 10 months and be done, general
Yes.
conditions wise?
Yep.
All right, we're going to talk, I think, Twig, we're going to address this 90-day, this extra 90 days. We're going to assume that it's going to be 30 days. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
23 may change a little bit. 24,
24 is all the work that's being done by the town, not included in the GMP.
does that work back to the emails?
Correct. It's a verbatim from that email.
Just, Again, just so we're not duplicating, that's also in one of the spec sections that you reference under, I think, summary of work. So it looks accurate to me, but I don't think we want to say the same thing twice.
I vote that we leave this in here.
Okay.
Kevin. On behalf of the committee, if anyone disagrees, it's fine. This is an important risk point. I look at these assumption clarifications and read them and try to figure out what the construction managers tell us are heavy risk items. So that was going to be my wrap-up question. What are the heavy risk items that we should be concerned about in these assumptions and clarifications? And I think this is probably number one from my vantage point. Is there anything else that...
Before you go back, can I just ask a question? The point before, the cost of the town doing this gets billed to our contract, and therefore we could conceivably do everything right and still be over when we get a bill from the town?
No, the town is accepting these costs as part of the DPW budget. We're paying for the paving.
Because before I heard some things will be billed to us, the bill to this contract.
No, that we're only talking about utility charges, if I understand that,
Okay.
and utility service. This has been negotiated.
Okay, so this
With
is
the
not going to go,
town.
we're not
No.
going to get a bill for this added to the
No.
contract? Okay, fine,
We're going
thank
to
you.
get a bill
I'm
for the
sorry.
paving, and there's certain parts that we're supposed to be doing as a committee.
Along those lines, I think it's the responsibility, or it should be the responsibility of this committee, to know what the cost is of the work done by the town, irrespective of whether it comes out of our budget or the town's budget, because that cost, whether it's $400,000 or $800,000, is part and parcel to the cost of this entire project. And I don't think we can just gloss over that.
And we had those numbers, as a matter of fact, but we can dig them out. That said, do we want to move then to the schedule, if anybody doesn't, if they...
You had some more points, though, didn't you?
No, I'm good.
I'm sorry.
So, in summary, before we get to the schedule, I guess, purchasing and town council need to coordinate this addendum, and I will say, on their behalf at the moment, just to get, so they can get going on this, if it's covered in the contract, they're going to strike it here. I mean, they won't strike it without you reviewing it and seeing it, but
That's fine.
yeah, we need one good set of documents and no conflicts. Right?
Yep.
So you guys stay in business, I know, but
And other things.
schedule, this is the 10-month schedule?
Correct, with a start date of the 29th of February.
Anything about this we should know? Is this a normal, everything works here, or are there
Very
anything that are-
normal. Some things I had to tweak a little bit from the original schedule because landscaping kind of fell in a non-opportune time to plant. We're going to have to work around that. It's a large site, the parking lot's large, there's a lot of room. I don't see that being a problem. And we're also going to have to work closely with asphalt and making sure that we can get the asphalt in on time.
You're definitely going to have winter conditions as you close this project out.
There will be some winter conditions,
Right.
correct.
Is there any float in this schedule, to Steve's comment? Is this, any anticipation of weather delays or any float in this schedule?
Weather delays, obviously we can't forecast. A strong nor'easter where flood zones were breached obviously could change things. But with the start date of March 1st here, we're kind of getting out of winter storm season. There could be one in March, obviously. And the building would be back up on the piles by the time hurricane season starts.
When is the building back on the piles?
Building is moved back,
September 16.
yeah, it was summertime.
October, I believe, right?
Remove
Moving
support
building
beams and
back.
Move
cribbing,
building
move
back,
building
September
back.
16.
Yeah, September, mid-September.
This September 18th, or September...
Yep, mid-September.
September 4th and 18th, according to this.
Yep, I mean, that's the,
Give or take, yeah.
close to hurricane season, but,
Close, it is hurricane season.
well, once
Right?
it, yeah, I mean,
August, September, October,
Right.
August, September, October.
through October
September's the
31st
peak.
usually.
So this building could be on cribbing in August? Or will be on cribbing in August?
Yes, we're planning on moving the building out,
2 weeks after, a week after Labor
yeah,
Day.
in May. Have it moved by May, by the beginning of May, into the parking lot.
And it won't be moved back till mid-September.
And mid-September, move it back.
Why is that?
All the foundation work we have to do, all the piles, all the concrete,
We-
underground utilities.
We're looking to reduce as much risk as possible. Does this suggest we should be discussing starting the job earlier?
That's a possibility, but depending on the winter we have for this winter, you know, if it's a lot of snow, a lot of ice, you don't want to move that building during that time either, so it's a possibility that to try and start it maybe in February and do the demolition and get the site mobilized and move it earlier, that's definitely a possibility. But I wouldn't recommend moving that if we have a, you know, really bad winter.
What does a trade contractor, a subcontractor for moving the building say? Do they care?
He thinks
They
the
said-
March 1st start is more favorable for, you know, for risk.
March 1st instead of April 1st.
Yes. Oh, no, March 1st instead of starting what we originally bid out.
For the overall project.
Yes.
Okay.
When I talked to him, he said, oh, that's actually better. Now, obviously, depending on how harsh the winter is, if the winter is as harsh as last year, March 1st is going to be mid-February, you know, early February. Last year was so cold, but
Right.
that's an anomaly.
Better because he was originally scheduled to move it during hurricane season,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be sitting in the
Exactly.
parking lot over the winter.
Right.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
I should probably know this, but is there test pile requirements here?
No, because we're only driving them to 20 tons.
Okay. So,
That's not, there's two, I read that two ways. Test pile as to 3 or 4 of them to determine length prior to order, or test pile as far as a load test?
I was talking load test and then also testing prior to, I'm looking for long lead items here, because I see, so what really, we talked about turnaround submittals quickly, that's not what I'm going to, but are we concerned about anything about getting production piles delivered to the site? Is there something here that could, you know, that looks to be some gaps in time in here, which is good for the schedule, but are we worried, what are the long lead items that we have to watch out for? Piles, anything else? Or piles, yes or no, I guess?
I don't think the lead times are
Piles
long
aren't
on
a long,
piles.
shouldn't be.
Timber piles generally are pretty readily available from the treatment plant. You know, the big treatment plant in this area is in New Jersey, and it's, you know, just a drive up 95. Concrete, no, I wouldn't think. I mean, unless there are like nationwide material shortages, I mean, it's all readily available items. Siding, I don't think is a big deal.
Hardy
Windows,
panels.
we have
The only
vinyl
long lead
windows.
item would be the curtain wall, which is being stored on site right now in the
Right.
trailer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No new air
Structural
handling.
steel are all readily available shapes and locally
So-
fabricated.
No load test, though, 20-ton piles underneath that threshold?
The pile driving contractor will want to drive a few at the start of the job to verify length, yes. That type of test pile,
Right.
they will do, but that's at their expense.
Okay. And who is the inspector for the pile? Your firm?
That's part of our overall contract, yes.
Okay. That said, any other questions on the GMP? Again, this is a draft. There's a lot of information here that needs to be shared with the town attorney. Hopefully, Twig, you'll be able to do that. We're going to be reviewing this in final and on the 22nd, the meeting we're having on the 22nd. I'd like to take that opportunity to kind of segue into the schedule and the bid verification, because that's still an open question for us. And Twig, I think you had some comments about extending the bid period and how you're looking at it from purchasing's position. You want to join us and talk about that a little
Jim?
bit, can you, or?
Do we need to talk about Exhibit F at all in here, or do you want to talk about
We
schedule
just-
instead?
We just quickly
Very last
go
page.
over.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, hold on one second, Twig. Yeah, we didn't hit Exhibit F. Do you want to take us through Exhibit F?
Sure. The Exhibit F is the list of the add alternate cost breakouts that weren't accepted, but are still listed. One is the storage room 128, acoustical treatments in the gathering room, bioswale plants per drawing, building and area plants per same drawing, or two different drawings, actually. It just cuts the site in half. There are also trees as an add alternate, dune grasses as an add alternate, and carpet tiles where there might be damaged floor from moving the building. That's it.
All my seagrass was washed out.
These add alternates come from the bids?
And that's
Correct.
about 12 feet of seagrass.
So this scope is not in the project at the moment. Any questions on this? It was a much longer list, and a lot of it's been incorporated in the main project now. If there's no questions, then we'll have this go through the town review period and do the town review and get it back here in 2 weeks. That said, Twig, the question really is confirmation of these numbers and where the town is on the bid extension.
Good evening. To let you all know what the process is after this is that, as I mentioned earlier, I'll work with council to review the GMP, all the clarifications and assumptions, and make sure that they are synced up and aligned with the AIA contracts that we already have on file with Shawman. A cursory review suggests that everything is, but we'll make sure that that is absolutely buttoned down before we sign or execute this amendment to those contracts. The only concern that I had after reviewing this draft in the last couple of days is with the project schedule summary that was on one of the first pages. And it was the notice to proceed of January, construction start in end of February, beginning of March, and then the project completion in January of 2017. I'm less concerned about the project completion contractually than I am with the notice to proceed. And I realize that Shawman has done the heavy lifting as far as confirming with their bidders that they will hold their bid prices. I have a concern that we not extend that time period too awfully long. And I would urge the committee to look at a total 120-day period to hold those bid prices, which would be November 15th, based on the July 15th bid opening, and then December 18th, based on the other bid packages, syncing everything up for all the bids. It would be, I'd like to see the contract, the GMP with Shawman executed by November 15th. Shawman cannot contractually nail down the trades or any of the prices until we execute the GMP with them. And so until that's done, there may be some risk that something is going to change, and I would not want to see that happen. So it's great that the committee is reviewing this evening. If you're comfortable with reviewing it in the next couple of weeks and then buttoning down and being able to approve a final GMP, pending, of course, confirmation from council, I would urge you to accept whatever is determined to be the final GMP at your next meeting. And that will allow Shawman to contract, to get everything buttoned down with the trades. When you start is of less significance, but when you contract is the part that I am very, very concerned about.
When who contracts with whom?
When Shawman contracts with the trades is my big concern. So if we execute a contract with Shawman, say, November 1st, we are within 120 days of opening the bids. That is not an unreasonable extension of 15 days beyond the original 90 days that we required the trades to hold the bids. And
then Shawmut would be able to execute their contracts with the trades right on the heels of that. And that's what they cannot do absent a GMP approved by the building committee and then the purchasing authority.
Well, the building committee is prepared to review a final GMP on the 22nd this month,
Okay,
which would be October 22nd, and pass it to the purchasing authority the next day.
that's perfect.
So, well, that's that's one piece of it. The funding's the other piece of it, because the GMP, if you add the owner's cost of whoever has that list,
So the
26.
the owner soft cost total is 824, 273. That'd give you overall project cost of 7,397,509.
It's over. That's over our positive number
yeah.
by a lot.
So, just to repeat, the owner's soft cost, 824, 273, and I'm putting in parentheses, including contingency of what?
That value is 328,662.
So of the 824, 273, 328, 662 is contingency.
Correct.
And the famous insurance number of 170 is still there.
Yes.
It's embedded in that. And the final number, total project budget, is 7,397,509.
Correct.
Jim, if I may, also put an asterisk next to that, because we also identified that there's no utility cost apparently in that number, consumption fees. We need to, I think, as a committee, we need to look at the soft cost list to make sure we have everything.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, right. All right, so where are we? What we're saying is that it's going to be, depending on how tonight turns out with the other agenda items, it's not going to be difficult. I don't believe if this committee sticks with 7A, it's not going to be difficult for us, shouldn't be difficult for us, if we get the support of your office and the town attorney to review these two documents, the contract and the amendment. It wouldn't be difficult for us in 2 weeks to provide the purchasing authority with an approved, a committee-approved final documents and GMP. That's as far as I'm going to go.
Yeah, I would just request that we get those documents in advance of our next meeting so we can have the opportunity to review them offline, because, you know, I'm kind of reviewing on the fly here, which I'm used to doing after 6 years on Board of Finance, but I prefer not to do it with this, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Okay. That,
Do that.
right. There's two things that are obviously also in the room here. One is FEMA, and the other is funding. So, which we have always been asking for FEMA information when we've been getting it recently, which is good. But as far as funding is concerned, we have basically said FEMA and funding are not our job, and we, even though we keep on getting dragged into it, we keep on pushing back as best we can. So, I know Bob Mayer couldn't be here tonight. Is there any late and great breaking news as far as funding or where we're going here, or does anybody?
There
We were
is
told,
not.
excuse me, just to set the stage, we were told at the last meeting that there was funding available to fill this gap, this budget gap, between $6,028,000 and $7,397,509.
That is correct.
He said that as far as he was concerned, the leftover funding from the original project would fill the gap.
Yes.
Anybody else hear that, or was it?
No, it's accurate from what we heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that money in hand?
Well, you were absent.
Yeah, I know. One time I missed a meeting, I'm getting beat up for it.
That was a strategic move, or? No, it's my understanding that what this committee was told, that the original $5 million appropriation bond to make repairs, including Penfield, including Southport Beach, including debris removal and so forth, right?
Yes.
That there remains unspent funds in that account of over $2 million.
Okay, so that is money in hand.
Yes.
Yeah. No, he was pretty specific
He's
about it.
very clear about that.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means in the way this town works as far as next steps.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, we're talking about accepting a GMP of approximately $7.4 million.
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now, when we have a bonded amount that's significantly less than that. Can't do that. If you have additional monies that is going to be specifically allocated, we need something in writing from either Mr. Mayor or, you know, some written assurance from the town that that money is going to be specifically allocated to this project, because absent that, I don't see how we can proceed, because we have a GMP that is in excess of the bonded amount, and we can't do that.
Well, how the town can proceed.
Yeah.
We can proceed, but the town's going to have a problem, because the purchasing authority won't release Shawmut until the project is appropriately funded,
That's correct.
right?
That is correct.
So we need to have all the ducks lined up in a row for 2 weeks from now.
Right.
You know, based on, you know, what we have tonight, which is a, you know, assurance by Mr. Mayor, which never gives me the warm and fuzzies, no disrespect, Bob, but we need something a little more concrete so that we can proceed, because the way things stand right now, I don't see that we can.
Okay. I did have one thing to add, and that is, I did ask Bob Mayer on behalf of the committee after the last meeting. We had the issue of FEMA funding, given the two options. And I believe, can't find my notes, but I believe that his estimate still stands for 7A, pretty much where it was in February, even with the new information from FEMA, that the net cost of the town would be approximately $1.2 million on 7A, which is adding the lockers back. And the range, I believe, that Bob Mayer gave to the Board of Finance was 900 to 1.5. So 7A, he informed me that 7A would be a net cost to the town of 1.25. I'm scrambling here trying to find my notes. Yeah, 7A project would be his estimate, because the worksheet was started today. The scope matching was started today by
Yes. Joe.
Joe and the FEMA consultant. So that's underway, that comparative analysis. So net cost of the town is within the range that this committee, or Bob Mayer gave to the governing bodies when they approved this project. So the two pieces are, where's the money?
Right.
And can it be transferred? Second piece is, what's the risk? So the project price has gone up, the risk of the town is the same, and probably more credible than it was in February, because now we have FEMA, the 50% rule, and we know where we are with 75% funding, so we're really in better shape as far as any representations to the town bodies are concerned. We did also ask the committee wanted to know from Bob at the last meeting what the net cost of the town would be for 7, which is without the lockers. And we're kind of drifting off here and kind of segueing into the next agenda item. Shawmut was asked to produce a repair estimate for Mr. Mayor, and the repair estimate was $2.6 million. 2.8?
2.824, 2,824,803.
And this estimate, this impacts option 7, which we're getting to. We're kind of blending the two agenda items together. Did you have an opportunity to go over option 7? Were there any changes to what you presented to us at the last meeting?
Yes, there is. We have a reduced, we have a cost for, it's called Scheme 4, but it's option 7.
I'm sorry, Scheme 4. So we can look at Scheme 4?
Yes.
Great. In the next agenda item, whether we like it or not.
Can I go back? Are you done with me for the moment?
Oh, yeah, thank you. We're not done, but please have a seat.
Can I excuse for a minute?
So would you explain this to us, please?
Sure. Really, I guess I'll go over the changes from the last time that we looked at it. We had an opportunity to since it was decided to go with the second bidder and to go ahead and proceed with that person, that company for option 7A, we had more discussions with them regarding the ad alternates and some of their unit prices. That resulted in actually a reduction of about $100,000 in what we were estimating that this alternate would cost the last time that we spoke. We then rotated the, it was requested that we put in the 3 ad alternates that are being accepted for 7A and incorporate them to make the two projects apples to apples, so that they're very similar in scope of work minus the locker room. And so this would be with the cable rail system. This would be holding the same contingency for landscaping. And then the alternates that are not selected are similar to the ones not selected at this point in time on 7. The landscaping ad alternates and the storage room 128. So they're very similar. So we've tried to get them as apples to apples as possible. They are a different design a bit, just because of the locker room, but very similar with everything else.
Thank you. Okay, so we have before us the conceptual budget for Scheme 4, which was the redesigned scheme that survived out of the 6. And this conceptual budget gives you a total project cost
of project cost of $6,330,262. There is one correction that we would have to make, and that was the utility usage.
Where can I find?
If you looked on the second page,
No, where can I find the owner's cost here?
the owner's cost is on the second page. That would be the
Fourth line up, it's 774. It's
774.
on that sheet. In the bottom.
Okay, got it. Okay, sorry, I missed it. Thank you. That's all I wanted to see. So the redesign, which we thought was going to be just less than $6 million, it was $599, has in reality, getting it apples to apples with 7A, plus the inclusion of owner's costs that we had to absorb, this project is $6,330,262, including owner's costs. Okay.
That's correct.
A component of looking at number 7, there doesn't seem to be any question that this is going to be a repair project, not a replacement project. And as a repair project, we're going to have to, FEMA's going to look at it as a repair. Bob Mayer, because the committee asked Bob Mayer to look at what the net cost of the town would be under this project, he wanted to know what the repair costs were, and Shawmut has furnished a repair cost, which we got just before this, which is $2,824,000, right?
That's correct.
If, according to, Mr. Mayor couldn't make it tonight, but if FEMA accepts the repair cost of $2,824,000, they then deduct the insurance, the grant, and probably the deductible, even though, that might be contentious, but probably the deductible. So just in a very informal telephone conversation to be confirmed and be brought back up to before us at the next meeting, by the time you make the deductions from FEMA's if FEMA does accept the $2,800,000, you're almost awash. Because you have, between the insurance and the grant and the deductible, it comes up to $2,500,000 or whatever the number is. And they take that, I did not understand it myself, and I may not be even repeating it properly, but FEMA takes the estimate that you agree on repairs, and then deducts what you've received to make those repairs.
In either scenario, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. The insurance
So-
proceeds.
Yeah,
Right.
the insurance proceeds, the grant, and he was concerned about the deductible, which they're getting a clarification on. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is, it doesn't help us with this Scheme 4. Where are we? Option scheme. So, open to any discussion. This is an agenda item that's on our agenda tonight, to discuss the committee's opinion regarding Scheme 4. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but I'd be happy to hear.
I have a couple of quick questions, and having just received this, I haven't done the math, but at the last meeting, when you provided somewhat similar documents, I was able to take it home and do the math, and I was wondering why the percentage increase in cost from the original Option 7, which is now called Scheme 4, has gone up on a considerably larger percentage basis than has Option 7, from its original $6,026,000 cost to the current, whichever we're at, $6,896,000 or $7,397,000, depending upon what you want to include and what you don't want to include in that calculation. I believe it was somewhere like 24% on one and 38% on the other. And I'm wondering why.
Which is which, when you say that?
There was a lower percentage increase on Option 7A than there was on Option 7/Scheme 4.
Well, I did not look at it as a percentage, to be honest with you on that, but I would say that it's probably directly proportional to the size of the building and the amount of changes in the design. They're different designs, but it's almost like if you did it cost per square foot. You know, we went through that analysis before, that you're going to have more site work. Your site work impact on the larger building, that percentage of it, because that cost is going to remain the same, but that has an overall larger percentage of cost on a smaller project. So you've got items like that that are going to be remain constant, like the electrical service and things like that. There are constant values that don't change because of the size of the project. So when a project value changes, then the overall percentage would grow. So I think that the site package, because of its cost being the same, is going to impact the project to you.
And why was it then that there was one line item that just jumped out at me, site work? Why would site work be more for a smaller pavilion, for a smaller project?
For exactly that reason. You're bringing up the fill. We're having to bring a retaining wall to come around the edge of it to abut the bulkhead, and creating that that cost, that fill of the material to make it all even when there's no building there.
It's the bulkhead on the east side.
Right.
That changed with Scheme 4 than did in 7A. The bulkhead is now moving towards the building.
Why?
The short answer is we made some tweaks to the Scheme 4 just so they could price it more accurately. that we haven't run by the committee yet, because this has not become a real project yet.
Well, tell us what you're thinking, what assumptions you made.
Before you do that, can I just make a statement here, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So I think this is one of the fundamental issues that I've had with this entire process, is that every time we wind up looking at the smaller, less expensive option, there seems to always be something, whether it came from our architectural people or our construction people or from the administrative people, that makes the smaller option look like it's more expensive. And here again, we have, things that have been changed, unbeknownst to us, that now we're going to go back and discuss. And I have to say that that's not how this process should be working. In full disclosure and total transparency, changes that should be made should be discussed. It should be the purvey of this committee to make a decision as to whether or not we agree with those changes. And here again, I apologize, but I think it's a joke. I really do. And every single time we've done this, I've been able to go back and, a week later, come back and pick apart the numbers, right? The numbers don't lie unless you want them to look like they do. But we can always find something in there. And I'm not accusing anybody of lying. I want to just make that comment and make that statement. But this is at least the third or fourth time we've been here.
Well, we've got more accurate numbers as we go along. We're at this particular juncture. You have a question. Everybody's here. Let's go through it.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make that statement.
No, and I hear you, but on the other hand, there are few committees and situations that I've been on over many years, I don't even want to tell anybody, that are as complicated this as regarding options, budgets, drawings, bidding, FEMA, you name it. So, Kevin, you were about to respond to this.
Kevin.
No apology necessary. It's all part of the process. So, several meetings ago, we did the 4 schemes for the alternate projects. After that, we tried to refine Scheme 4 because it seemed like that would be if there was an alternate direction, that would be the one the committee was interested in.
Correct.
Didn't really have the opportunity, or maybe there wasn't the right opportunity to bring it back before the committee for a prolonged discussion. So we took the liberty of making some refinements to the design in a way to hopefully reduce some costs. Some others would naturally go up. So what we did was we looked at the east end of the site where there would no longer be a building, and we're struggling with what that's going to look like, how that's going to perform, and made the suggestion that, again, we did not run by the committee yet because this was still preliminary, that we take the bulkhead and we actually turn it and run it along the end of the building, so that now we had better access and flow to the beach from that area where the locker room currently is. So we developed an alternate site plan that showed the bulkhead being turned, run along the building, eliminating a significant amount of retaining wall, eliminating some of the fill that would have to be brought into the site under the current project. Didn't really close the loop as far as whether that was going to cost more or cost less. So I'll take the blame for that. We didn't really vet that fully from a costing standpoint.
So what does that, do you know what that does? Is that priced into what we're looking at tonight?
That's correct. That's correct.
Did it turn out being a net negative or positive as far as building
It was a little bit more.
building a return and making the bulkhead more in conformance with the footprint of the building, which is what essentially I think you're saying?
That was our hope, is that if we're going to continue down the road of Scheme 4, we should look at that.
So that area that we thought was going to be a play area or whatever, contained by the bulkhead, is now reverts back to beach.
But at the higher elevation. So we would raise the grade up so that we still had the berming effect that was,
That was
always part of the project. But we would just taper the grade back down on each side. The big benefit would be handicap access and just general beach access, because the bulkhead is less in the way of getting to and from the beach.
Okay. And the net change in cost, excuse me, I'll get right to you.
Okay, no problem.
Was it a positive, a negative, wash?
Right now, I don't have the other one. I just stayed
Okay.
with this one. I don't
All
know
right.
right from my head.
But in the common sense of what you've been doing with this project? Is it?
I don't recall it being hugely significant either way, so it didn't ring a bell.
Bulkhead cost $125,000 to install. You're saying you're going to take a third of it and swing it back as a leg. So there's going to be $50,000 or $60,000 worth of bulkhead costs.
We would reduce the volume of revetment.
And the revetment.
Well, and also the revetment that would have to be built.
Right. So it might have increased, to your point, and it might have increased the project cost. Is there anything else that we should be concerned about that this smaller project, Scheme 4, has gotten hit by after the fact, after it was explained to us originally and we reviewed the drawings?
I don't believe on the design end there was. There may have been some things that we coordinated with Shawmut as far as what was in the scope, such as the extent of the roofed over deck areas, which I think was something that you guys caught on this round.
Right, I think we put
No, you
everything
got it.
back in.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob, then I'll go after you.
If I can just jump in here, gentlemen, sorry. I just want to clarify, because we're talking about a lot of different schemes. Scheme 4, this one we just got handed out, that is essentially the project that was passed by the Board of Selectmen. Am I missing
Yes,
something?
Originally.
Roughly,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
What's changed is obviously better numbers because it's gone out to bid, and the whole idea of swinging the bulkhead around and changing the elevation of that side area, which was going to be a play area, but now is going to be part of the beach.
And also, remember the whole discussion of soft costs, and there's
Yes.
a lot more built into all these estimates for soft costs than there was at one
Right.
time.
But in terms of the project itself, what we're talking about is what was originally passed by the Board of Selectmen with some changes, some minor changes.
Yes, 2 public bathrooms, minimal deck to access those bathrooms, and the west wing being moved and moved back
I would say,
along with the
I would also
related
say the
work.
parking lot, the raising of the parking lot, that area.
Okay,
too.
yes.
Included in Scheme 4.
Yes, if you
Right.
remember, there was, as the design development developed for option 7A, we wound up repaving the whole parking lot, raising the
Right,
parking lot,
right.
and so forth. That's also now built into all these options.
Okay.
Which it previously, a year ago, it was not.
Right. So, long story short, we have here essentially the same project that was passed by the Board of Selectmen that we had asked for $6 million and change on from them. So, no?
No, I thought you meant the first time.
The first time, yeah.
The first time was 4.7
Okay,
million.
right.
Then we came
I'm
back
sorry.
to 7A,
Yes.
which became 6
Right,
million.
I got you, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So basically, we got the project that was passed by the Board of Selectmen at the price point that we had bonded for 7A. If I'm looking at this correctly, right?
Originally, originally we picked this because it was $599. We got, the committee went off in this direction as an alternate project because it was $599. I'm looking right at Scheme 4, and this was a $599 project without the changes that have taken place over the past month and a half.
I think the delta there also is at the very bottom, design and estimating contingency.
300,000.
Right, now, that's not in the GMP because it's already bid, it's already a project.
Right. So, to your point, though, Ian, has this crept up unreasonably, or what's happened here? This project that I'm looking at is Scheme 4, which was at $6 million, is now $6 million.
6,330,000.
Right. So Scheme 4 is this committee's original option 7
Not quite.
with changes to the parking lot.
And also, option 7, as we proposed it, had bathroom, showers, and changing rooms. This just has bathrooms.
Okay.
This isn't quite as elaborate as what we proposed to the Board of Selectmen.
Which makes my point, is that accurate, Kevin, from your
It's
perspective?
programmatically with the number of fixtures and the size of the bathrooms,
The
it
same?
basically is, yes. Yeah.
Okay, it's too bad, it was going to make my point easier.
I know, I backed off and agreed with him
So
because I
you
knew I was
see
going in
where I
your
was going,
direction.
right?
Yeah, right. You got it.
That's why I could never be a politician. I show my cards up front too soon.
You did a good job.
So this project was essentially, this committee's original option 7, which had a cost of approximately $4.7 million, which went before the Board of Selectmen and was passed. It then went to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and it was passed. And then it wasn't until we went to the Board of Finance, round 2 or 3, after Mr. Mayor being almost ejected by the Board of Finance each time because his numbers were so far off, that it was decided that option 7A would only cost the town about roughly $900,000 more. So why, the quote from one of the RTM members was, "Oh hell, if it's only $900,000, why not?" So I guess my problem is, and it's just my problem, but I want to share it with you all, is that we went from 4.7 million now to 6.3 on this project. Right? 6.33? Whereas option 7A, which was 6,026,000, has only gone to 6,896,000. Right? Those are the numbers?
I think you're-
Take
I
total
think-
construction costs plus contingencies of 323 plus 269, which is 593, is 6,896,000, 538.
I think the soft costs aren't included in the, it's more like 7.4 million.
Yeah.
It's the number we talked about tonight?
Yeah.
7.4.
So, okay, so this went from 6,026 to 7.397, let's call it 7.4, right? And the other one went from 4.7 to 6.3,
Yes.
right? Okay.
I'm not sure I agree with you with the 4.7. I'm trying to find my basic.
While you're doing that, I'll play with my calculator a little bit. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Isn't that what they say at some of the meetings?
What was the original bonded amount that got approved by the Board of Selectmen?
6,028,028.
Oh, 20.
By the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, well, must have been. But the number traveled with us all the way through. Or did it?
No, we didn't go to.
Because we requested, we had a first initial request when we presented option 7 to the Board of Selectmen.
I'm looking for it. As luck would have it, I didn't bring one of my famous iron binders.
Blame it on me.
It's my inoculation. I could find it.
You can find it too. It's on the town website.
Yeah, it's,
What date was that?
oh, it was a present,
Now you're really asking for it. What
Yeah.
date was it?
Well, I'm about.
it was a presentation to Board of Selectmen, must have been like in December. I listed each, I got so sick of,
So just rough, down and dirty, rough, napkin, back of napkin math. The smaller project cost has increased by $1.6 million, and the larger project cost has only increased by $1.3 million,
Part of that is design construction.
$300,000.
right?
Didn't see.
So I mean, that would be the first thing that I would point to and try and understand why it's so high.
But there's no.
Because we had, in the 4.7, I mean, the design and estimating contingency of 301, 441 that you have in there, that was in the 4.7. You didn't just give us here's how much it costs to build, it's here's how much it costs to design, here's how much it costs to build.
On August 7th of 2014,
Right?
he said that at DD,
Where it's underwater?
he's making,
I printed it.
Another joke.
This is coffee grinder?
No, this is a strawberry daiquiri he's got in the blender.
So,
Can we have some, Rich?
so
I hope he is, for his sake.
Ian,
Yes.
I'm looking at when we did the DD estimate,
Okay.
and we reported on 7 August 2014.
Okay.
We had a construction cost, no owner's cost in there at all. at 4.5 million.
Okay.
That's your 4.5. So your 4.5 million didn't have the soft cost in there, and it didn't have raising the parking lot and some of these other items in there.
Okay, because I just thought I heard you say that that it did have the cost of raising the parking lot.
Not back then.
Okay, but, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're saying Scheme 4 has the cost of, got it.
And that,
Okay.
And that was when we went to DD on option 7, the reporting between the two. And that was given out on 7 August 2014.
Okay. Okay.
So the 4.5 did not have the soft cost.
Did not have the, right, like the parking
And
lot.
no parking lot and all that.
Okay. So essentially what you're saying, I guess, is that the net difference is about $1.1 million, right, between the two options?
It would be between the, it would be the 5.2 versus the 4.5.
Yeah.
That would be the difference between the two.
Okay.
In construction cost only.
Okay.
And the owner's costs are consistent, pretty much.
Right.
Okay.
But were the owner's soft cost as high in the initial stages as they are
Oh,
today? There's a
no,
huge,
That's the problem we're having.
yeah.
We're constantly trying to compare apples and apples when we can't.
You can't.
Unless you keep on making the adjustments in your mind. So, that said, I think where we were on this is we still don't have information from the fiscal officer on this. And we have the two proposals before us. One we're moving forward with, the other we have as a data point that you, at least Steve, I think you were concerned about it too, that we maintain, we keep this with us, it travels with us, this lesser project. That's what we're going to do. And we need the information from Bob Mayer. He's given us a preliminary on 7A, but he's got to give us more than a preliminary. He's got to give us some good information on 7, or Scheme 4, I'm sorry.
Okay, one last question, Jim,
Yeah.
if I may, to our construction and design team. The changes that you made, that you shared with us tonight to Scheme 4, what was the added cost of those changes and redesign? Ballpark. 300,000, 200,000, 250, I mean, I'm not going to hold you to the dollar or to
Is
the
it
penny.
fair to say it's close to a wash or a minimal increase?
It didn't seem like it was moving that much. We actually came down 100,000 from the last time we reported to you, just from our scope review with the better numbers from the contractor now being used for 7A. So we actually came down in cost.
Are you talking about the delta between
Between-
option 7 from last year?
No. I'm talking about Scheme 4, from the time it was presented until, at that price point, to tonight, where you said you've changed the bulkhead and, raised the, the landfill or whatever, fill, whatever you call it, sand, beach, those changes.
And we've essentially come down $100,000.
Okay, but if you didn't do those, let me rephrase my question. If you didn't do those, if you left the bulkhead the way it was, and left the sand at the level that it is, or that it was going, what cost would you attach to that?
I would have to go back and look at the detail, because of the changes, we didn't create a delta of that now.
Okay, I think that would be something this committee would want to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, on our agenda, number 7 is current status of FEMA reimbursement criteria and impact on the funding for the project for 7A and Scheme 4. I can only report what I heard from Bob Mayer, and that is that it's approximately $1.25 million net cost of the town, which is in the range he originally provided to the Board of Finance. In Scheme 4, he's going to look at, he just received, and appreciate the work done by Shawmut, the design, the repair estimate which we have before us, which is consistent with what was done by the forensic engineer. It's $2.8 million, and out of the $2.8 million, if FEMA agrees to it, the first thing they do is deduct what the town was paid for, the funding the town has for that fix. Which in his opinion means that the net cost of the town is about $3 million on Scheme 4. Because that's the remaining balance after you, so he thinks that he hasn't formally come before us, which he will, I'm hoping, or at least provide us with information on this last piece. That's where we are. Item 8 was something which, presentation, discussion, approval of the project schedule, including approval by the town entities. That's very much up in the air. What we're saying, Twig, is this committee in 2 weeks is going to provide the purchasing authority with an approved guaranteed maximum price and a project with contract documents ready to roll. And we're urging the town to move on it sooner than later. Like to start demolition in January or February. So, that said, is there any feedback yet about, I mean, we're going to have to rely on the purchasing authority and the first selectman's office and the town fiscal officer to straighten out this funding issue? So are we going to have to go before these bodies for review or for request for funding, or it goes 100 all the way back to your point?
Yeah, what I believe I heard from Mr. Mayor say at the last meeting was that the way the bonding resolution was written for the original $5 million funding was that money could move in between. It was intentionally worded so that money could be used wherever it was necessary. It wasn't specific to Jetty Number 1 or Penfield Pavilion or South Benson Marina. Out of that, there is approximately $2 million remaining in that fund that's unspent. And that was because none of the repairs were made to Penfield when it turned out that it was going to be more expensive and more extensive than what we originally thought. So there's that money available that can be used towards this project. There is also the separate discrete funding of the $6,028,000 that is also available for the project. And Bob stated, I think, pretty clearly at the last building committee meeting that the way the bonding resolutions are written and the way the funding was approved, that the committee has access to both funds in order to get this project built. So what I think there are a number of things that the committee can do. Is to march forward with the GMP and leave it up to Mr. Mayor and Tetro to make courtesy calls to any boards or the RTM to advise what the committee has decided to do or the actions that the town is taking or recommends in order to get the project built, to the extent that Mr. Bradley chooses to participate. He is.
We've done it. We have officially and unofficially stated in public and in private that we are not in the fundraising business. I mean, this is not our job.
Right.
With all due respect to everybody, we're willing to build it. Why, I don't know, but we're willing to build it after all this time. We can't handle any more than we've got here. So, do we pass we can just leave it the way we have it, and that is tell, as you're a member of the purchasing authority, just say that the next step for this committee is going to be to move this project forward at an approved guaranteed maximum price at the next meeting on the 22nd. I mean, that's what we have set up as our schedule.
I would agree. I don't think any further action is necessary tonight by this committee. I think that what we're looking at is that 2-point-something million dollars from the $5 million bond that was issued a couple of years ago, and I think I was actually on the Board of Finance then that approved that, and Mr. Mayor might have been as well, actually. I think that's something we need to get really buckled down, because without that money, we can't proceed, because we would have a GMP that is in excess of the bonded amount. So the two must be in tandem.
Right.
But in terms of any action or any going before the bodies, I would agree with Twig that we don't need to do that, as long as we have assurance that that money is in fact available to us. And it might be helpful to have the bonding resolution to look at, just to make sure that we're in good stead. I think that would be kind of a critical thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's critical whether we have to, because again, it's not inconceivable that with an election coming up and possibly new first selectman, if we go through the process. If with an election coming up, and if we have to go through the cycle, a new group of people may look at this project differently. I'm not suggesting we rush forward, but I think we should have to, I think it's important for us to know whether we need additional regulatory approval.
Right.
Because again, it would, maybe if we know we need it, maybe we should stop, or maybe we should move forward, but I think we should know that.
Our next logical step, as far as our work is concerned, is to get a revised GMP that has the language and the corrections and the edits and so forth that we've discussed tonight, and has legal review as far as the town is concerned for 7A.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the funding situation will catch up to it. But I don't see what this committee can do to resolve the funding issues. This is something for bond counsel, it's something for the selectman's office, it's something for the chief fiscal officer, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Board of Finance.
I agree.
Depends on how, if the money's there and it's available, that's one thing. If they want us to go through a review cycle, fine. If they want us to go through an approval cycle, we're going to interfere with, not miss, we're going to interfere with your concerns about the market, bidding in the market.
That's correct.
And I don't see that we need to go through an approval process if the money is there, because the money for that 2.5 bucket that we're talking about, that's been approved.
Right.
So if we, just a quickie review by bond counsel that the resolution allows us to use those funds for Penfield or any other purpose, I don't see that we would need to go through the process again, because then we have basically two bonding resolutions to work off of, which enable us to do what we need to do. So, certainly a courtesy call would be, advisable, but in terms of going through the whole thing again, as long as that money's there and in place, which it seems to me from what we're being told it is, we should be able to proceed.
Well, how much more assurance? We were told that at the last meeting it's there. What more, do you want a written assurance? What
Yes. Somebody should. We don't need it, because all we need is the funds. But certainly, the town's going to have to go through and ensure, I mean, to me, the open items are that, the open items are the confirmation that these bids will be held.
Yes.
That, I don't know whether a simple letter from each of the contractors is appropriate, but you certainly got, by the time we're reviewing this GMP again, we're going to want to know these line items are good. And so we have some work to do between now and the 22nd. And we will deliver, as best we can, a GMP to the purchasing authority on the 22nd. I think it would behoove the town bodies to coordinate whether or not they can support us on this. If they can't, then we go through an approval cycle. If we go through an approval cycle, then you have your own, then there are risks regarding the existing bids.
That is correct.
And the one thing I don't think we want to do is put this project out again. I don't know what that's going to do to the marketplace. I mean, the big driver here is to get this project going, number one, to get it going. And what's the market, where are we with the rebid? More cost or obviously more time?
Absolutely, yeah. A loss of time, which is going to cost
Right.
the town a lot more money.
It's escalation.
Labor rates going up in July, prevailing wage rates going up in July.
And you'd be under the new CRO.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see any advantage to risking
Well, then that has to
bidding it
be carried.
again. I really want to, I can't stress enough, I really want to nail down the GMP as soon as the committee can.
Well, we will do that.
When the construction starts is a completely different discussion, but what I think needs to be in place first is the contract.
Well, I would
And-
think on behalf of the committee, it would be helpful if you carried that message forward, and that is that we're hearing tonight that this is going to be another cost exercise to put it back out to bid. I mean, and plus, there's new regulations as of October 1, which are going to impact this project.
They will. And I'm retiring, so that
The other
that
thing
may
I
not
think
be
was-
helpful either.
It was asked if we're going to approve, if theoretically next is the next meeting, that we say we want the information in advance, we have a chance to do it, so we don't have to spend the evening
Going through it.
reading it
Well,
in
you'd have
front
to
of you.
spend it, I know, but we would have wanted to go through it anyway. I mean, it was a good exercise. We
But we might have reduced some questions
shaved
if
half an
we
hour
had a
off.
chance to
Yeah,
read it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And had a deeper, been able to do a deeper dive ourselves.
Right,
you know.
right.
Yeah. Well, now that you have a cursory understanding of what some of the issues are and some of the languages in the contract, because of the thorough review that you made
Oh, no.
tonight, that once council and I go through and sync everything up, if there are any changes, I can probably send those through as a track changes or put footnotes in the document or something to indicate what's been changed, and I'll do my best to explain why.
I'd like to see the...
And I'll try and get that to you. I'm pretty confident I can get that to you by, I don't know, Tuesday or so before your next meeting.
Is receiving information by Tuesday satisfactory to the
Yes.
committee?
It would be Tuesday,
Week and a half from
the
now?
Yeah.
20th,
on that
maybe?
meeting.
Would that be enough? I can make the commitment on my behalf. I don't know what Stanton Lesser's schedule is.
Well, we'll have
town
to
attorney,
accelerate
so-
that somehow.
I'm
We'll
sorry?
have to accelerate that. What I think the committee's going to
Okay.
want to see on the 20th is a copy of the contract and a copy of the amendment.
Okay.
And if it's, I would much rather see the agreed-upon red line version or whatever it's going to be between the town and Shawmut at that point. We don't want to be negotiating here on the changes. We don't want to spend an hour and a half talking about changes that should be taking place. Somehow that's got to take place over the next 2 weeks. Legal review, any changes agreed upon by Shawmut, final product back to us. An Amendment 1, and the contract, so we ourselves can look at both documents.
Yes.
Okay.
We then, if there's no objections, we then would move to item 9, which was added by the committee, and that is approval, what was item 9? Approval of invoices?
Outstanding invoices.
There's one invoice.
And where are we on that?
Rich and I said okay, so. This needs to be.
There's a new one.
Well, first thing we've got to do is confirm that there were no objections to the committee's action last time in approving those invoices. I think that's where we left off. We approved it pending.
The approval, right.
Yes.
And you had no problems, no objections?
No. Nope.
That said, I'd entertain a motion that the previous invoices be approved. We can word it the way we have to word it, but is there a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second. And this is to approve the invoices that we sent back to committee at the last meeting.
Right.
So it's really a confirmation of
what we've
previous
done.
approval?
Right.
Confirmation of previous approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Thank you. We have an invoice for tonight?
You do. There was one invoice that I emailed out a couple of days ago. It's from DeStefano and Chamberlain. It's number 5225, dated September 29th, and it's for $4,085. And it is for engineering services, building committee meetings, revisions to Scheme 4, conference calls with the building committee chair and with Shawmut, and review and markup of Shawmut's budgets and so forth. All the work that DeStefano and Chamberlain has done to prepare for the last couple of meetings.
That's the one you sent to Rich and I a few days ago, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to steal your thunder, somebody's thunder here. Is this a line item, within the line item? Or is this extra?
By line item, you mean the soft cost budget?
Yeah.
I believe it's in the most latest soft cost tally. Not necessarily the one that Shawmut presented tonight, though. Right, because you have the one attached to Scheme 4.
The last one we had was up till the 24th.
Yeah.
So if you had anything beyond September 24th.
The work that you've been doing, is that consistent with your original scope of work? Or is this added to it, or?
I would have to say it's added to it, because we're kind of in the limbo land between when the drawings were finished and when the construction starts.
Okay. You've approved it?
Rich and I have approved it, yes.
I entertain a motion.
Motion to accept.
Motion's
To
made.
approve the invoice.
I'll second that.
Steve, thank you. Second. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Public comment? Yes.
This committee was given the authority to spend $6-point-something million by all the town bodies. I don't understand where you think you get the authority to spend more than that without getting it back from the town bodies. Neither of the bond resolutions contemplated a project of $7.5 million. So
We hear you.
Where does that legal authority coming from for you to approve something in 2 weeks?
We're waiting for it.
From whom?
We
Bond
hope.
council and town council.
On the specific issue of your ability to go beyond what all the town bodies have given you as an authority so far.
Go ahead.
The 2 whatever million dollars it was, that was approved as part of a $5 million package several years ago, approved by all town bodies. What I asked for tonight was to get something from bond council and/or town council verifying that those funds may be used by this committee for this project. We don't have an answer to that yet.
But still, just looking at it procedurally, the town bodies were presented with a project of $6 million. If the town bodies are presented with a project of $7-point-something million, regardless of where you're getting the money from, it's a much bigger project.
You're correct. And what we said in more than one meeting is either it's a review or a request for funds, but those agencies have to be presented with our information and our recommendation.
Do you believe that as of tonight, you have the authority to spend $7
No.
million?
No. I mean, we've desperately, as you've so loyally witnessed, that we are not in the fundraising business. We're not in the fund allocation business. All we're trying to do is get a project that's acceptable to the town, that yields the most benefit from outside funding like FEMA, insurance, and everything else. We're close.
Far be it from me to want to drag this out any further. I have to limp into all these meetings, so I'm not a masochist.
No.
I'm simply concerned that I think you may be stomping on the authority of the RTM, the Board of Finance, et cetera, by rushing ahead. If you have that legal authority, so be it. But I didn't hear you mention, when you said you were looking to get authority, it seems to me you want to get from the town attorney whether this committee can spend more than $6-point-something million without, no matter where the money comes from, without going back to those towns.
That's what Rob's saying.
That's exactly what I asked for.
Yeah. Yeah, don't misunderstand our studious avoidance of fundraising, that's what I call it. And I'm not saying you are, but I don't want anybody to misunderstand that we would ride roughshod over any of the approval agencies. We're not in that business. This is a town working together, and so we'll figure it out. Somebody will figure it out, and we'll be supportive. If they want us to, if they wanted me to appear before the Board of Selectmen tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I'd be there. Whatever direction we're given, we'll do. We'll do the right thing. But no, we do not think we have authority tonight to proceed with this project. Yes.
I haven't said much all night.
Well, for you haven't.
I just wanted to echo what Mr. Reber said. You know, at our last meeting, we were given the impression, I believe, I'll speak for myself, from certain administration officials that that we had the money to proceed. They explained to us where the money was coming from, and said that they would in fact verify it with bond counsel, but there was money left over from another bond resolution, and that we were good to go, essentially. And I don't think that's accurate. I'm not a politician. I'm not in the administration. I'm not a lawyer. But it seems to me, as Mr. Reber had just said, all of the presentations that this committee, represented by the chairman, made to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the RTM was based upon a project cost of $6,026,000 or $6,028,000, and as a result, we were granted a bonding resolution, or a bonding resolution was made in that amount. So the bonding resolution is really a byproduct of the presentation and the cost of the project. So if the cost of the project has risen by $1.3 million, it seems to me to make logical sense. Again, I'm not sure how the political process works, but certainly in my view, that the same bodies who approved the $6 million project would need to approve the $7.5 million project, regardless of where the funding comes from.
Not so sure.
So, I just, again, I'm just, certainly if I were in town government, I would want it to work that way.
Well, even that, the history of this project would push you in the direction of going back, whether it be for information purposes, for an update, or for funding.
Yeah, I think certainly for informational purposes, I would 100% agree with you, but you're talking about two bonding resolutions that have already been approved by the town bodies. Now, you can make the argument, to Ian's point, I think it's a fair one, you can make the argument that the $5 million appropriation that was made several years ago contemplated an entirely different set of facts than what is before us now, and I think that's a fair point. However, the fact is the money has already been approved. It is there, it is available, so that's why I think we need some guidance from bond counsel and from the town attorney as to what we can and cannot do, and how we go from here.
Twig, do you have enough information to take this forward? Do you want me to help in any way, or?
All help is welcome and appreciated. I have made quite a few notes, and I'm not in the office tomorrow, and our offices are closed on Monday, so I have a lot of work to do in a very short period of time. But I have noted to invite Mr. Mayor to the next meeting on October 22nd, and I've also noted to check with the council and your bond council. All of your concerns.
Thank you. Do you think enough information has been shared that we don't need a resolution directing anybody to do anything? I think we're pretty comfortable.
I think
where
we're
we are.
fine.
I think we're good.
Are there any other comments by the committee members before I entertain a motion to adjourn? Anybody have any words of wisdom? And you've been very quiet down there, getting concerned.
No, concerned. No comments.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion made to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Hey, Rich, is he still there?